Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Setubal, Portugal for stop 3 of the 2023 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup. Today's temperature, as you can see on screen, 21 degrees with the water temperature at 18.3 degrees, which means our athletes will be taking to the water in their race suits. Plenty to look forward to today. Plenty of incredible athletes set to take to the water. Most importantly, we have the defending champion on a roll at the moment. It is Krzysztof Rozowski, the series winner in 2022. He is currently leading the way for the sprint titles and will be hard to beat today. Plenty of other swimmers to watch, of course. Axel Raymond, the big Frenchman, is in action, making his debut at the World Cup stop this year. It's good to see representation from Japan. They were very impressive in the relays as of the Golfo Aranci stop, and I'm sure they'll be looking to be competitive once again. We can see Hector Pardo there, the GB swimmer, looking to get in and underway. Been a few years since we've had a race suit race in Setubal, and I'm sure these athletes will be feeling the elements today. The wind is up, and of course this is one of the only stops where we have a later start, that for the incredible tides that we face here in Setubal, adding to the challenge that is open water swimming, and I'm sure these athletes are up for the task today. At the top of the race as well, we can expect to see Marcello Guidi, the Italian. The Italians have been on fire so far this season, and I'm sure it won't be the end of their season as they look to make an impact at Fukuoka 2023, this year's World Championships. But we can see that incredible coastline here in Setubal, Portugal. Plenty of athletes will not be too disappointed that this has become a mainstay on the open water calendar, in addition to its incredible coastline. The Portuguese culture is absolutely fantastic, as are the Portuguese tarts, which I'm sure many of these swimmers have been avoiding. As we get that panning shot there, you start to see the race course for today. The venue sitting in the Atlantic Ocean, and at the far side of the course we have the Sado River, which is of course very tidal and does lead to a lot of the tight competition that will be ahead of us. So this has been one of the mainstays at this year's World Cup series. We have some of our best athletes getting introduced at the very end. Rob Muffles, David Bethlehem, the 2021 10K World Junior Champion. Axel Raymond, as we mentioned prior, the 2017 and 2019 World Champion. Dario Varani, the 2022 25K World Champion. So it will be a great battle between Raymond and Varani, with those two looking to take a battle once again. Marcel Shelton of the Netherlands being introduced now. He is a hero of many Dutch swimmers. He has been on the world stage for a number of years now, and always is up for the fight. He is very good on this course, had some of his best results here. As we mentioned, the times are very quick on this course. With the rushing current on the far side of the course, it can lead to some incredibly quick swimming. Most of these races usually sit in the wetsuit element, but with the recent changes by World Aquatics in this domain, the change from the optional wetsuit between 18 and 20 degrees is now mandatory race suit. As we move to our superstars of the sport, Rob Muffles being introduced, the 10-kilometer bronze medalist from the 2019 World Championships that qualified him for the 2021 Tokyo Olympics. Up next, we have David Bethlehem from Hungary being introduced, the 2021 10-kilometer World Junior Champion. Certainly one to watch in the future. He is one that I expect will lead out the race here, with the likes of Greg Paltrinieri and Florian Walbrock not in contention for the medals nor the race. Up next, we have Axel Raymond, the 2017 and 2019 25-kilometer world champion. He is an imposing figure and will be looking to make his presence felt in the final laps of this course. We'll get to that shortly. Up next, though, Dario Varani, the 2022 25-kilometer world champion. Another imposing figure that will be making his presence felt. It looks like he's in great shape, and we'll be seeing him at the end of the race. Marcello Guidi, the next Italian across, currently sitting in second place for our series leaders, so a lot on the line, not only for the win of this race and potentially some federation selection spots up for grabs, but also with Guidi currently sitting second, it's a good opportunity for him to jump forward. Overall leader currently is Christoph Rosowski, as we see Domenico Azzorenza of Italy being introduced, the 2022 10-kilometer silver medalist, and he has been in fine form this year. He was second behind the man being introduced now, and Christoph Rosowski, the 2022 World Cup overall series winner and current World Cup leader. He has a star-studded lineup in his resume: 8 gold medals at World Cups and 18 medals overall. He'll be looking to add to that total today. He obviously has raced here in Setubal before and will certainly be one to be looking at. I'm sure he'd be in the odds-on favourite, but regardless, with everything open water swimming, you never know who's going to take it out until we get to the very end of the competition. So as we see there, 29 men in the start list for today. Some superstars of the sport, past, present, and of course emerging. And it'll be interesting to see how they play out. Today's race will have the men's and the women's running simultaneously, with the men starting 10 minutes prior. So as soon as we get the men's underway, we will pretty much move into the introduction of our female athletes. As we've mentioned prior, today's water temperature sitting at 18.3 degrees. So a brisk swim, but not brisk enough for the wetsuits the fellas will be racing in their race suits. And we expect that far side of the course, the tidal patterns, to really push the swimmers forward and make for some interesting racing. Historically, this race has led to a number of swimmers being disqualified on the far side of the course as they weren't able to get around the turn can. So we'll be watching that very closely as we get closer to the start of the race. So the race will start on the starting platform and the feeding platform, which we'll see our athletes feed from on lap 1, 2, 3, 4, and well, they won't feed on the 5th lap. 2,000 meter laps today, and the finish is in the middle of the screen there. Those orange boys, it's an interesting element to this open water leg. So the men now on the starting platform and looking very, very good. Kozebek of Czech Republic, an intimidating figure himself. He'd like his chances here. He's been doing some good work in the off-season, I've seen on his Instagram. So as to the order of the race, it's anyone in that top 10. We saw in Golfo Oranci it was Greg Paltrinieri leading away, a lead pack of 6 to 7 swimmers at the end of the race, and it was a thrilling encounter. Not sure how it will play out here. Can't imagine a big split in the pack. I'd say we'd hopefully see David Bethlehem of Hungary leading them out As we get into the starter's hands, we'll wait for the start. And underway here in Setubal, meet 3 of the 2023 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup. Setubal, Portugal has been a mainstay on the World Aquatics Open Water World Cup for a number of years, dating back to 2006. It held the 2012, 2016 and 2020 Olympic qualifiers. This is royalty amongst the open water swimming world. Already we can see a lead of Hungary. I believe that's David Bethlehem. He looks fantastic out the front. He does like to lead a race from the start, and he's doing a fantastic job early. He does have clear water. You can see on the screen there, quite choppy at the start of the race. I can't imagine anyone's going to get away too briskly. We saw the feeding strategy play a major part in Golfo Oranchi, and I'm sure the swimmers would be aware of that. But how good is it to be back racing the third consecutive weekend for World Aquatics, and the swimmers well and truly putting on a show and building this fantastic sport that we've loved since its inception in 2008 Olympic Games, but well prior. So you can see on the top of the screen there the other Hungarian, that is Krzysztof Rozowski, our series leader so far. But at the front of the race, David Bethlehem, he has some sensational early speed. So we've discussed the men's field, and we'll move now to the women's field. Equally, if not even more so stacked than the men's, as we've come to expect with the new initiative in 2023. We'll have athletes being introduced, and then we'll move to our current series leaders and champions. It's good to see some Portuguese athletes represented throughout this weekend. So speaking of our Portuguese athletes, Mafalda Rosa currently sitting 10th in the series lead for Portugal. And of course, Angelica Andre, the Portuguese superstar that has been so dominant throughout her open water career, will take to the water once again today. She is a superstar in the sport, but also on this course. She knows it very, very well. As we said, this course has been prevalent since 2006 and is currently being broadcast throughout Portugal, which is a fantastic initiative for the sport. And I'm sure many Portuguese swimmers coming through the ranks, looking to one day represent their country. So we see Taylor Martin now being introduced from Australia, her and Jess Moat, the only Australians to have raced in the opening 3 meets of the 2023 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cups. Taylor recently winning bronze in the 5 kilometer titles at Australian Open Water, and certainly an athlete to watch, as is Jess Moat, looking to get some international experience in this European stop of the World Cups, as are a number of our Japanese athletes. We mentioned in the men's intros the Japanese athletes featuring early in the relays at Golfo Oranchi. Another team entered into tomorrow's relays, so we'll see how they play out. The Hungarians looking very good, and we'll get to be introduced to some of them shortly, as we see Mafalda Rosa of Portugal being introduced, currently sitting 10th in the overall series lead. And the big Portuguese swimmer, you can hear the cheer there, Angelica Andre, the 2022 10-kilometer European bronze medalist that was swum in Rome, and against a number of the competitors that are taking to the water today. Next up, Caroline Jussy of France. She was a bronze medalist in the Golfo Oranchi World Cup mixed relay, but had a fantastic individual swim. She has swum on this course a number of times, so the transition from ultramarathon swimming to marathon swimming has been successful for Carolyn. Excited to see what she has in store for us today. Lara Grandjean introduced next, the 2019 25 kilometer world bronze medalist, a superstar of the sport like Carolyn, making that transition across to the shorter distance, the 10 kilometers, and will feature again today as she did in Golf Laranci. The Italian Barbara Pozzobon, she was fantastic in Golf Laranci as well. Silver medal in the mixed relay, but was fantastic in the 10 kilometer, holding towards the front of that race. Ana Olaz up next, the 4th place finisher, the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games. She is a superstar of our sport and a main reason why Hungary will feature so prominently in tomorrow's relays. Moving forward now, Gabrielski of Italy introduced the 2022 5 kilometer world silver medalist and currently World Cup 7th place. She finished 3rd overall in Golf Laranci in the 10 kilometers and will certainly be one to watch as this race heats up. She was a big fan favorite last week in Golf Laranci. Unfortunately doesn't have the same Italian support here in Portugal, but I'm sure these fans will get behind her very much, as are all the Italians tuning in from home. Up next we have Ginevra Toducci, the 2022 the 10 kilometer European silver medalist and currently sitting 6th on the series lead. She was 2nd in Golf Laranci and was the only competitor really pushing Leonie Beck at the end of that race. Saying that though, it's very hard to push Leonie Beck. Moving forward, the Tokyo 2020 Olympic Games silver medalist, the 2016 Olympic champion, the 2022 10 kilometer world champion, and our current sprint leader, Sharon van Rundel, sitting 2nd overall in this year's series as well. She has been extraordinary through the opening 2 stages, and I'm sure today being a race suit race will suit Sharon. And there we have our current champion, almost unbeatable this year, the Terminator that is Leonie Beck. She is in fine form, silver at last year's World Championships, but has looked unbeatable in 2023. And we have our starting athletes for the women's 10 kilometer race here in Setubal, Portugal. They'll take to the elements and race through the conditions. 18.3 degrees the water temperature, 21 degrees Celsius the air temperature. And these athletes are up for the challenge. 26 athletes set to take to the water, and over half of the field looking to be pushing into those medals. A lot of the other swimmers, certainly ones to watch on the horizon, looking to get some of this international experience. The Hungarians led by Ana Olaz, but certainly can't forget Bettina Fabian, the junior world champion from 2022. So when you look at the relay team, that could potentially be Olaz, Fabian, Bethlehem and Rozovsky, the Hungarian team certainly proving a show as we go into the starters' hands now at Setubal, Portugal, with that fantastic shot. Our athletes primed and ready to go in what will be just under 2 hours of racing here. It might be a little bit cold for these athletes, but it adds to the challenge of open water swimming. 18.3 degrees. When they start working hard, they won't even know about the cold. You can see all of our athletes lining up now. The coaches will be feeding from the same pontoon in what I expect to be just over 20 minutes time. 5 2-kilometer laps today. Feeding obviously up to the swimmer, but the sprint laps will be on 1, 2 and 4. So expect to see Sharon van Rundel near the front of the pack. As we go into our starters' hands. for Setubal, Portugal. Race 3 underway here in Portugal. It has been a mainstay on the calendar since 2006. Now our 26 women take to the water as they race through 10 kilometers of open water swimming in all that open water has to provide across this fantastic race course. Plenty of challenge lie in front of these athletes. Can we see Leonie Beck win her 3rd consecutive race? Or will the pair of Italians take it up to her? Sharon Van Ruendale leading the way for the sprint points. And our junior leader at the moment is Martinez. We'll see how it plays out as these athletes brave the elements and race through Portuguese open water legendary course. Setubal set just 50 kilometers, a short drive from Lisbon, the Portuguese capital, and formerly a fishing capital, specialized in the export of sardines, but today it specializes in providing an incredible race course for our athletes. The early lead there, Leonie Beck of Germany, very much different to what she's done in the previous races. I believe after lap 1 in Golfo Orange, she was sitting 58th, so she is out in front and commanding a lead early. This is a sensational move, similar to what we saw from David Bethlehem on the opening of the men's race, but Leonie Beck really does have the class to swim away with this race if she wants to. So I expected to see some moves on this side of the course, the beach side of the course, but to see it so early from Beck, I wonder if any of the athletes were expecting a similar move. Being of a slight figure but very strong is Leonie Beck. She would struggle more than the bigger athletes in the field, but regardless, Leonie Beck really looking quite strong here in the opening stages of the women's 10 kilometer. In fact, she has got some space behind her feet to the Italians. She is swimming across the course, so I think that is Taducci currently sitting in second that will jump on her feet here. As we can see, that there is the finish chute that we'll see come into play in the final lap. But so far, about 300 meters into the race, 250 meters into the race, Leonie Beck out in front and looking very comfortable, fighting through the chop here in Setubal. So it is very hot early here in the women's race. They're really being strung out by the current series leader and champion of the sport, Leonie Beck. We know that she will be looking to take the title at this year's World Championships, qualify, of course, for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games. On the far side of the course there, we can see our men's lead pack. We have both races running simultaneously today, and we expect to see some fantastic battles through an action-packed 2 hours of open water broadcast. We'll switch between the races and I'll do my best to keep you up to date on the lead of the race, but at the moment Leonie Beck is stretching out this race and saying to the women in the field, if you want to beat me, you're gonna have to go around me. And so far everyone's tucked in nicely and just watching what the German has to provide. It'd be interesting to see how this plays out. We've seen Leonie Beck come from the back of the field the majority of her races, and this race, similar to her countryman in Florian Welbrock, where he does lend himself to going to the front of the race early and challenging those to sort of rise to the occasion, as opposed to swimming through the field, which is a much more traditional race course, race tactic. Today's race set in Setubal, as we've said a number of times, and we can see the far side of the course. I believe now we've cut back to the men's race. Yes, indeed we have. So it'll be a bit messy as we battle through that, but you can see there as Leonie Beck leads the race, you can see the different approaches of racing lines. The tidal patterns in Setubal are unlike anything else on the world swimming scene, and cause the athletes to really have to think hard about the different race lines that they choose to take, and really test their technique of open water swimming sighting. And we've seen a number of DQs occur on this course due to the strong currents that played to the athletes' hands. Back to the lead of the men's race now. I'm not too sure who those athletes are out in front. We did see Bethlehem lead the race early, and I think he's still thereabouts in that white cap on the inside of the course. But we'll get an update shortly. We get that wide shot of this incredible bay here in Setubal. It is truly one of the best places to race. Really challenging conditions for the athletes today. We have to start a bit later than most other races due to those tidal patterns. That's Krzysztof Rozowski now, sorry, on the inside of the course. Bethlehem on the outside of the course in the white cap, and I will get an update as to the blue cap in the middle. But Rozowski, our current sprint leader, I tell you what, if he takes the win here on lap 1, he'll be hard to be challenged for the lead overall in the sprint points, not only today but potentially going towards securing the win for the series. Just 2 more races on the World Series this year. We go to Paris after Fukuoka World Championships in August. We'll be in Paris racing on the Olympic race site, and then in December we'll race in Israel as the final race of the series. So Rozowski looking fantastic in this weather, especially on the far side of the course. You can see those little runners starting to form and push the athletes forward. Not only can we see that on top of the water, but more importantly the current driving underneath, really pushing these athletes forward with every stroke. So I expect to see on the shore side of this race course that we will see athletes try and break the field, try and cause some separation, and then when they get to this side, the far side of the course, try and stretch that out with those undercurrents really making a massive difference. So Rozowski leads after lap 1, or into lap 1, sorry. As we mentioned, the sprint laps on lap 1, 2 and 4, and I tell you what, his current point scores 133. The point score sprint leader in Krzysztof Rozowski. Sitting second is Logan Fontaine and Marcelo Guidi, both on 73 points apiece. There's 40 points on offer here at the end of lap 1, and I'm sure Krzysztof will be eyeing that one off. We go back now to the women's race. It is Leonie Beck leading the way. It has bunched up a little bit behind Leonie Beck, so the women starting to react to that early lead from Beck, and she's fighting her way through these tough conditions. It's an interesting move from the German, and I'll be watching that closely to see if she lets anyone do a lot of the hard work today. Beck usually sits further back in the field and strikes later on in the race, letting the other athletes do a lot of the work for her. But with the conditions today, it's really going to take a toll on whoever does the majority of the work at the front of the race, as they have to battle through those elements. If you're sitting in that pack, where you'd want to be sitting is about where you can see, I believe that Australian cap, might be a Portuguese cap, sorry, but about 3rd row in on the outside of the course on this straight. You really want to be getting as much protection from that chop that's cutting across the course as possible. So as we see our athletes coming down to turn can number 1, they have got quite a wide line into this turn can. That is, as you can see there, the Sardo River which attaches here, and this is the inlet to the Atlantic Ocean, so a beautiful piece of coastline, but certainly has its challenges for the athletes as the tide comes in and out of the Sato River. It rushes through here and can throw those athletes off their turn line. So whilst they might not look like they're on the best line into this can, when that current starts rushing through, it will drastically change the athlete's line. And if they can slip in around that turn can, they can get a nice little run. But you can see the conditions here, the Atlantic Ocean really putting it on our athletes. But Leonie Bex looked like she has receded the lead now. The early push didn't go to her plan, and she's now battling for the lead with, I believe, Gabrielski. And we'll see how that plays out as they come down with about 100 meters to their first turn can. It's a fantastic shot showcasing the best of the coast here in Portugal. It's not only home to a number of open water races, but also surfing, triathlon, cycling. There's a many of sports that choose to be showcased here in Portugal, and with views like this one, it's easy to see why. We go back to the men's field, and Rozovsky once again in control of the race and looking very comfortable out in front is Rozovsky. He comes through the first sprint can there and gets the maximum points, 40 points for Rozovsky. We see the Hungarian for the feed now. Saw in Golflaranchi, Christoph and David of Hungary actually had to share feeds throughout the race, as I believe they had a malfunction with their feeding can. But today, both athletes feeding separately, at least on the first lap. We saw David really have to get in close to that feeding pontoon to get his feed. The pace is on, though, in the men's race here. That first lap with the sprint points, it really is starting to have an effect on this sport, with the athletes having to negotiate the early speed. And as they make their way onto lap 2, you can see the chaos coming out of that turn can once again. We've got a great shot here of these athletes, and churning up the water are they, which is just great to see the sport of open water swimming continuing to grow. We have 30 athletes in the water today for the men's race, and they will be looking to vie for medals. So at the front of the race at the moment, Jules Wallart of France leading the way and doing a great job at this stage. We saw him battling there in the opening lap with David Bethlehem. Just 21 years of age, Jules Wallart, and certainly one to keep an eye on. Obviously the French Federation quite deep in this event, as we see now Rozovsky, the leader on lap 1, just go back as he did. His racing now is just unmatched in the world of open water swimming. He is a sensational racer, knows when to apply the pressure, knows when he can shut it off, and you can see him now just tucking in on the right side of the course and just sitting in comfortably. I believe that's next to Marcelo Guidi. No, sorry, that's Azarenza sitting next to Rozovsky there. But the athletes on the inside, the shore side of the course, the outside of the course, they'll be getting protected by the athletes on the inside of the course. The chop coming across, as we said in the women's race. So the athletes that decide to lead early will have a significant toll played on them as these conditions take effect. But Wallart just looking fantastic as he cuts through this chop. as we're saying, France very deep in the men's marathon, and I can't imagine that's going to go away anytime soon with the likes of Wallart and, of course, Sacha Belli, Logan Fontaine, Marc-Antoine Olivier. Their ranks really do run quite deep, and I'm sure them and the Italians and, of course, the Germans, the three main powerhouses in open water swimming, will continue to be the athletes to watch in this domain. But like with anything, we can see a number of federations putting their hands in the mix. We know that the Spanish team, Carlos Garrich, is looking to have his impact felt. Currently sitting 4th overall for our point leaders. Linus Schwedler currently leading the way for our junior athletes. Neither of those athletes competing today, so we'll see who does make that imprint felt. Rozovsky pushing up now onto the hip of Wallart. So didn't expect to see him feature until the end of this lap. We know that lap 2 once again featuring in the sprint points, but Rozovsky is putting in a big surge here. Wallart rolls over to fix his cap. I can't imagine too many athletes will lose their cap today with the water temperature sitting at 18.3 degrees. So as we get that wide shot of the course once again, clearly Rozovsky wasn't happy with the pace that Wallart was throwing down. I thought he was doing a fantastic job, but it is quite bunched up in the men's race. So Rozovsky deciding to pull away and string it out once again. Too many athletes still in contact and too many athletes within a threat for the lead. We go back to the women's race, and I believe that is Tuducci leading the way for Italy. We know Sharon van Ruendaal, our current sprint leader, will be looking to take some points for the sprint at the end of this lap. We saw Sharon take the points at the end of lap 1 and lap 3 in Golfo-Aranci, but wasn't featuring really at the pinnacle of the race as it finished. So maybe if she doesn't chase those points on the early laps, she'll be featuring prominently at the end of the race. Again, as it is a new initiative in 2023, not really sure where it will lie and which athletes it will sort of favor, and even if athletes start helping each other to achieve success in this area. Major changes this year, including the sprint points, sit with the series points. The series points, as we mentioned, the overall series, but the junior points as well. Athletes, in addition, are able to wear wearable technology throughout the race. So some athletes will be racing with their heart rate monitors around their chest, and other athletes even wearing GPS monitors at on their caps. So it is Gabrielski leading the way. So we've just had an update from the lead boat in the men's race, and it is a massive update. Atsarenza has withdrawn from today's competition, unfortunately due to a back injury which he has been dealing with for the past couple of days. But regardless, that's huge news for the rest of the field. Domenico Atsarenza out of the race in lap 1 of the 2023 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup Meet 3 here in Setubal, Portugal. But regardless, the men and the women braving the elements and doing a great job here despite the wind. Gabrielski leading the way for the women, and the pace is well and truly on. That one long string bean, that's how we know it's fast. Especially on this side of the course, they'd probably be swimming at about 106, 107 per 100 meter down this far side with the current assisting them. But Gabrielski and Taducci doing what they do best, sitting at the front of the race, being a force to be reckoned with. And Gabrielski currently sitting 5th overall in the sprint points with 47. She could pick up 40 points here and move herself all the way into third position. As we come down with about 150 meters to finish off lap 1, we'll see if it leads to any swimmers missing or skipping any feeds. We move back to our men's field here. I believe that's Tiago Campos from Portugal, currently the best Portuguese male open water swimmer. He finished 18th in Golfo Laranchi, and I'm sure many fans here in Setubal will be cheering him on. You can see at the back of this lead pack here on lap number 2 how tough it really is in these open water conditions. We saw a number of athletes have to withdraw from the race in Golfo Laranchi, and I'm sure some of these athletes will be finding it tough out there today. As they get around this main head here, you can see in the background the coastline, the big cliffs here in Golfo Laranchi. At full tide, they are mostly underwater, but the tide almost at the lowest at the moment, and hence the water, the cliffside showing. But because they are around this cliffside, this is where the Atlantic Ocean meets the Sado River. The Sado River, 175 kilometers long, one of the largest rivers in Portugal, and you can see the effect that it has on the conditions on this head and why it can be so detrimental to swimmers as they truly are battling with the elements today, really punching into that headwind and trying their best to stay in contact with the lead of the race. There's no massive difference. We can see a swimmer out swimming solo to the side of the field. He is just off the pack though, so that's not going to impact the lead whatsoever. As we go back to the lead of the women's race, Gabrielski still out in front ahead of Taducci. She comes around this yellow turn can here. It is quite a big turn can, and athletes would have been able to pick that up for the last 400 meters or so. Gabrielski with a nice turn there, but you can see how wide these athletes are really shooting around this turn can. That is the effect of this current. 1.4 meter the difference in height between the current at the start and finish of today's race, and it does have a massive effect on this turn can in particular, as if they don't have a fantastic line coming out of this can, it can push them off course dramatically. But Gabrielski currently leading them to the middle of the course, currently not quite on the best track to come in to that feeding can, but I'm sure the adjustment will come shortly when she does a head up. Gabrielski though might pick up the 40 points here. You can see Sharon van Rundal sitting, I believe, in third position behind Taducci, but Gabrielski currently having it her own way. She's got to be careful that she makes the adjustment here to that timing chip and to complete lap 1. The intermediate gate looks like she has adjusted, and sitting comfortably there is Taducci in second. Gabrielski, absolutely fantastic swimmer from Italy, really has been making her mark felt at the front of the race, and will lead us through the intermediate gate in lap 1, come in and take a feed. So the Italians having it their own way through lap number 1. Sharon van Rundal went through third there, so I'm not sure if that was a conscious move not to push too early like she did in Golfo Laranchi, or just to sit back and save some energy for hopefully being in contention for lap 5 and ultimately the end of the race for the win. But these athletes doing a fantastic job to take a feed and head around that can and go into lap 2 to see our incredible volunteers getting the cups and bottles out of the water. Number of the athletes choosing to use recyclable cups as to have no effect on the environment. But Gabrielski has remained in front of this race. It's an interesting top 6 we have there in Gabrielski, Tadushi, Van Rundal, Fabian, Rojax, Bex, and Sismak. Sismak in 7th currently for Hungary. She finished 3rd behind Fabian in last year's World Junior Championship. So between Fabian and Sismak, Rox, and of course Anna Olaz, the Hungarians well represented here in Setubal in the women's ranks, and again tomorrow in the relay. But Sharon does look very comfortable, currently sitting in 2nd for the Netherlands. This is going to be a cracking race to see how it plays out. Not only at the front of the race, but as we've mentioned, a number of athletes getting some pivotal experience here on the international level. We see 4 Portuguese athletes in the water for the women, and they will be looking to be up near the front for the fans of Portuguese open water swimming. But so far it is Italy having their way with this race. They are very close to the shore though. It's an interesting strategy here from Taducci. I'm not sure if she felt in that opening lap that the current and the sort of chop wasn't so bad. She is very far off the course, hopefully using that current of the river to push her into the middle of the course once again. So we get that shot there. This is very interesting, an interesting approach to lap 2 in open water swimming, but specifically Setubal. It's not necessarily the quickest line around the course. It's the line that the pack takes. So obviously Gabrielski at the front of the race gets to dictate where she wants to swim. She's decided that she wants to stick to the shoreline as much as possible, and really that dictates the line that everyone else is going to take. So it's not going to be exactly 10 kilometers. They will swim a little bit over 10 kilometers today, but at what cost is to be determined by the front athlete. Obviously they want the easiest ride home, the most efficient ride home. So to avoid a little bit of the current and with that the oncoming waves, I'm sure that it was a conscious decision as we now see Gabrielski start to cut back towards the middle of the course. Another fantastic overhead shot though. These drones have been an incredible addition to World Aquatics coverage of this year's series, and you get to see the power that these women possess in their stroke. Sharon Van Rundal sitting in 2nd there, just looking absolutely fantastic. And you can see that string bean of athletes stretching out the front of this race. Be interesting to see why Taducci has decided to go to the front so early. And yeah, I'd love to get the inside of the athletes post-race, and I'm sure you can get that on World Aquatics socials pages and of course their website. Get a little bit of an insight as to how they're feeling in these conditions. We see usually in open water swimming, when an athlete comes up to have a sight and check their line of direction, they'll do it in the middle of their stroke pattern. So they'll come up with their right arm, lift their head, and on the left arm they'll put their head back down, and that split second of oversight of the race gives them enough time to spot the direction that they are swimming in. Obviously the conditions aren't fantastic today. They are really challenging for these open water athletes, and hence when you see Gabrielski at the front there take 2-3 strokes to see where she's going, what she's trying to do there is get over the top of the oncoming wave and use that height of the swell to see where she's going, as opposed to, you know, looking forward at the lull of the swell and only seeing water ahead of her. We go back now though to the men's race, And I believe that still is Krzysztof Rozovsky, his strong stroke at the front of the race, leading the way. He has got his legs going early, which is uncommon for Rozovsky. He usually prefers to turn his legs on only in the final lap of the race, but Rozovsky having to do it all early on in lap number 2. We do know, though, that there are sprint points on offer at the end of lap 1, 2, and 4. As Krzysztof, our leader, for the points overall this year, but for the points through lap 1, I think Krzysztof is really trying to get after it here, and you can see the effect that is having on the rest of the field, with a chase pack now falling off the back of that lead pack. They won't reach back to that front group for the rest of the day. They are now on their own for the next 3.5 laps. But Krzysztof Rozovsky imposing his way into this race, and it will be interesting to see how it plays out as they move throughout the race. So Rozovsky leads David Bethlehem, his countryman. They've had a number of battles out in this position. Bethlehem yet to win a World Cup, but I'm sure it's not far away in his future. A superstar in the making, the young Hungarian, was quite a showing at last year's World Junior Championships between Bethlehem and, as we mentioned, Fabian, the young Hungarian woman, both taking out titles. And Bethlehem, he does usually prefer to lead a race, but trading partners with Rozovsky, I'm sure they would have had somewhat of a plan coming into today's race to see who was going to be positioned where. Rozovsky has shown clear intent to win as many of the sprint laps as possible. He's the overwhelming favourite to take out today's race, especially with Domenico Aclorenza now withdrawing due to a back injury. Rozovsky, he's already got 8 wins at a World Cup level, and he's got 18 medals at a World Cup level as well. So we've just had another report of an athlete withdrawing, and it is another significant athlete. It is Dario Verani of Italy who has withdrawn, unfortunately, number 10 out of the race due to shoulder pain. You know, obviously when you're in conditions like these, it can start to take an immense effect, not only on the athlete's conditioning, but also on any sort of niggling injuries, and it does really challenge the athletes more than you can believe. The stress of swimming very fast over a 2-hour period, but also pushing themselves against the conditions. It shows just how strong you have to be at the front of these races, and I'm sure we'll see Varani back in action throughout the series, but for today his race is over, and it is really starting to play into the hands of Krzysztof Rozovsky. He is our series leader, he is our sprint leader, and he is our race leader as he comes down to finish lap number 2. So Bethlehem battling as well. We got a sprint point update at the end of lap 1. We'll get into that shortly. It was Rozovsky in first, Bethlehem in second, Wallart in 3, Guidi in 4, Huna Kovacs, the other Hungarian, in the mix as well. We can see Bethlehem and Rozovsky with a little bit of a battle here as they finish off lap 2. Bethlehem on the outside of the course, closest to the feeding pontoon. Will he get over the top of Rozovsky? He is making a really big push. He's not going to get there, I don't believe. Rozovsky just nudging out his countryman and teammate in David Bethlehem. Rozovsky rolls onto his back. A bit of carnage there through the feeding pontoon. Rozovsky takes his cap off and is taking his time here. I believe that might even be an extra feed. Fixes his goggles, in fact. So the condition is playing a bit of an impact on Rozovsky. He is well and truly back in the rear of the field here. But we know with Rozovsky, he does choose his moments to go forward. I believe that's Kovacs of Hungary leading the way now. Bethlehem sitting in second. Guidi in contention for third, with Manzi as well. So what a interesting little caveat into today's race. We go back in the field further. You know, you got the likes of the Frenchman Jules Wallard, leader at the start of lap 2. 3.4 seconds off the lead into that intermediate gate at the end of lap 2. The sprint lap, it does add a little bit of spice into these races. We know how spicy we like to get in open water swimming, but particularly at the end of these laps when, you know, you're only 4K into a 10-kilometer race and the athletes are battling for position. You got teammates really racing in the middle of a competition, and we see obviously Rozovsky choosing to hold back on that feed there, but Bethlehem taking the opportunity to make a move forward. You know Rozovsky will be really challenged at this point. We can see him sitting about 15th overall now. There's a lot of work to do to catch up to the front of the race. Rozovsky very powerful in this position, but obviously it won't be having it his own way, and Bethlehem would know that and has taken the opportunity to really string it out and potentially even open a gap. We know Bethlehem loves to lead these races. He's done it on a number of occasions, most notably in Israel last year, the final stop of the series in 2022. Bethlehem led for the majority of the race, really pushed it to what was the rest of the field, trying to swim off the front for the win. It's something that's very rarely seen in open water swimming, and the very top of the sport have ever been able to achieve it. That was how Florian Wellbrock took the win in Tokyo. But very few athletes have ever been able to pull that one off. Even the fastest of the 1500 swimmers and the strongest of our athletes. It's a bold tactic, but Bethlehem clearly wanting to stay out the front of the race and avoid a lot of the contact that comes from sitting in that pack. As we compare on this third lap to the women's, you can see Bethlehem with a much more traditional approach to this lap, staying towards the inside of the course, a straighter line, but obviously more affected by the swell that's pushing across here in the Atlantic Ocean. We go back now to the women's race, and it is our athletes turning through can number 2 now. They'll turn this can. We get a little closer. You can see the effect there of the current really pushing those athletes to the inside of the course. It's a tough gig to try and get around that turn cam, and spread them out ever so slightly as well. So a little bit of work to do here as they get the pickup of the current. So they'll start to race down this lap. We'll see how it impacts them. You can see some stragglers off the front of this lead pack starting to fall back from the front. I'm not sure as to what effect that will have yet, but we saw obviously in Golf Floranci the different lines that and the different impacts that played on the race. And we can see once again, I believe that is Gabrielewski leading the way. She hasn't had the straightest lines, but that is another benefit of leading these races, is it doesn't matter how straight you swim. Everyone has to swim behind you. And the Italian, you know, really utilizing that here, swimming again into the middle of the field. I think you can see Sharon Van Rundal still sitting in second here, so potentially could see a battle for the end of lap number 2 to see who'll pick up those sprint points. We got an update on the women's sprint points after lap 1. Of course, leading the way still, Sharon Van Rundal. She had 149 points coming into today's competition. Ariel Mueller was sitting in second with 105. She isn't contesting today. Neither is third through Moesha Johnson. Leonie Beck is, though, who sits in fourth. And Gabrielski in fifth overall. So after lap 1, it was Julia Gabrielski taking the top points. Taducci got through in second. Van Rundal in third. Fabian in fourth. Rohaks in fifth. And Beck in sixth as we called that through. So it certainly is an interesting race starting to shape up here. We look to our lead pack here. A decisive move coming from the middle of the pack. I'm not sure who that was, but very bold to pull off by themselves, and we can see the pack really starting to split here. An athlete not sure about leaving to go across. It still is Gabrielski out in front, Sharon sitting in second. So these athletes must be well and truly in the middle of the field. If they've split the packs, we'll get a panning shot in a second. But for the meantime, there's chaos all over the field once again. So we get a nice shot there. It'll be interesting to see who's leading that second pack. If it is someone like Leonie Beck, this is a very big move indeed. They would certainly have the better line on the outside of the course. Gabrielski has taken them well inside. When they come out, unlike the shore side of this race course, when they come back out of the middle of the course on the far side, they will have to do a significant amount of work to fight against it. So I'm just trying to pick up whose cap that is there. It is an Italian cap. As to who it is, yet to be determined, but we've seen these athletes have to make some big decisions to see who's going to come across. And we can see now, I believe that is Taducci in the middle of these two packs. So on the far side, the inside of the course, that is Gabrielski and Sharon Van Rundal. And then coming on the outside of this course here, it's very hard to pick up, but it might be Arianna Britti of Italy. And yeah, a number of athletes now coming across. So this is a big move shaping here in the women's 10 kilometer at Setubal. We knew the current had a big play on the race, and going down now, it's still Taducci is set on this line that is swimming her into the middle of the course. You can see that media boat there trying to do their best to correct the line. And as she comes across, she won't be getting the assistance of the current. So this could potentially be a very decisive move here between our lead swimmers. In fact, they might even be up on playing ground now. So Taducci with some work to do with Gabrielski to get across. Oh, this is a big move. Yeah, as we see it sort of on play, that big lead middle group should be putting on as much effort as they can here, try and make the Italians hurt. But at the moment, they're just swimming too course, not trying to make too many waves. But yeah, this is a very, very big move. There's no siding cans on the course today, so it is hard to pick up the best possible line. But we saw Taducci come around that second turn can and just head to the middle of the course in what was a little bit of organized chaos, and the ramifications that's had on the rest of the field is swimming zigzags down this second straight on lap number 2. But it's been a significant change in lead, I believe. We'll get it picked up in a second. The problem with having so many incredible Italian swimmers is it's very hard to pick up who they are on that caps alone. We know that Brady does have a very high cadence in stroke, so I believe that might be Brady leading the way, but we'll get an update shortly. But the Taducci, who's on the inside of the course here, has gone from a decisive lead to about 4th or 5th, if not, no, sorry, that's about 8th overall. She will have the better of the line going around the turn can. They're probably about 150, 200 meters from the turn can here as they start to pack up now once again. This has been an interesting second lap. Certainly nothing that you would have planned for pre-race, and I'm sure reviewing the footage with the coach would be some questions raised around what was the thought process to go to the middle of the course. But if it was to, Genevera Taducci leading the race now, so must have been one of those athletes that peeled off in the early stages of those two splitting. So it was Gabrielski who's slotted back now into 8th position, so she was our leader at the start of this straight, but Taducci now out in front and controlling the race. I wonder the ramifications that has on Sharon van Ruendal, who must have been sitting behind Gabrielski and has now slotted in about 9th overall. We go back to the men's race, and they are turning down the far side of the course. Still the majority of athletes in touch with our lead swimmer. And it still is Bethlehem leading the way out in front. Rozovsky swam all the way back into 2nd, so after having a brief cap change and goggle sort of switch out at the end of lap 2, Rozovsky has fought his way back from 13th to sit behind Bethlehem. Wonder if those athletes have a plan to sort of work together here in Setubal to potentially, battle out for the win. Now with the removal of Vatsarenza and as well Dara Varani, Rozovsky is the overwhelming favourite to take the win. Still some fantastic races in the water. Axel Raymond and Rob Muffles, we know what sort of pedigree they have. David Bethlehem looking for his first World Cup Series win. And a number of other athletes, of course, including the Frenchman. So they are fighting their way out now in the Sato River mouth, the catchment from the Atlantic Ocean, and the main reason as to why the conditions here in Setubal are so difficult to battle with. Sato River, as I mentioned prior, one of the biggest rivers in Portugal, is 175 kilometers long, also plays home to 31 bottlenose dolphins. Not sure we'll see them feature in today's competition, but clearly certainly a tourist destination. So we see our women's race finish off lap 2 here. That is Taducci out in front, picking up the major points. So she sat 2nd at the end of lap number 1. We'll get a bit of an update. That's Sharon van Ruendal, who has slotted herself into 2nd. I believe Leah Crisp there in the red GB cap, who swum nicely, and Anna Olaz, who's really put her mark on the race in this second lap. So Sharon van Ruendal now out in front, but with no intention in leading. You can see her roll onto her back there. She's looking for Taducci to go around, potentially Olaz or Pozobon to do some work, but Sharon van Ruendal, she has been burnt one too many times by Leonie Beck, who is now sitting comfortably in the middle of the pack. No interest in leading for Van Ruendal. She wants to save her energy for the race win, as does Leonie Beck. But Van Ruendal and Beck sitting on opposite sides of the course. Gabrielski coming through there in 7th position overall, 5.4 seconds off the lead. She was our leader at the end, at the halfway mark of lap 2. Sorry, it was Keegan there, the GB cap, not Leah Crisp, but Chris will be in amongst it as well. But yeah, it is quite a fascinating race starting to play out here in the women's, and 3 laps to go. It's only going to get more interesting. So we have mentioned that it is 5 2,000-meter laps to equate to 10-kilometer overall race, but it's actually about 1,960 odd meters per lap, and the final sprint to the win is about 160 meters from the turn can, which is athletes have battled through. We see now, believe that is Leonie Beck in the German cap, pulling up next to Anna Olaz of Hungary, sitting currently in a tight battle for second and third. Beck once again choosing to go on the inside of the course and trying to use the pack to her advantage to really protect herself from the chop that is facing here in Setubal. The women once again though choosing to be a lot closer to shore than the men's race, and you can see in that shot there, whilst it is still choppy, it is not nearly as choppy as in the middle of the course. So Pozzebon of Italy leading the way now, and she has been another superstar of Italian swimming, and you know has been competing at a very high level for a number of years now. The Italian in the black cap at the front of the race, and I'm sure as the race continues to unfold, Pozzebon would like her chances near the front. And it's again another benefit of having so many athletes at the front of the race racing for your country. You can start to work together sort of pre-race. You'll know similar tactics that will unfold and try and use those to your advantage, and knowing when those moves can happen often lead to ultimately driving towards success. We go back to Portuguese swimmers once again. Number 52, I believe that was sorry, let me just pull that up, but regardless, it's a great shot once again overhead of our athletes battling through these conditions here. So the women 51 minutes, almost 52 minutes into their race. Leonie Beck now comfortably sitting in second ahead of Anna Olaz of Hungary. A little bit of argy-bargy there for the second between Olaz and Beck. But nothing's been called by the race officials. They've got to be careful here though. Pozzebon with a little bit of a gap to her feet. But Olaz and Beck really sitting on top of each other, coming in and out of contact. Sharon van Roendaal sitting currently just behind Beck, and would like her chances within striking distance. So a very different race tactic than what was delivered in Golf-Oranci by Van Roendaal. On the inside of the course, that looks like Gabrieleschi of Italy making a big move on the inside, clearly not happy with the pace being thrown down by Pozzebon, who's out in front in the black cap for Italy. And you can see neither is Sharon van Roendaal, who's popped out and swimming alongside up to Leonie Beck, who's still in that battle with Anna Olaz. So Beck and Olaz with a fair bit of contact there. Leonie Beck, the queen of open water swimming in 2023, almost looking unbeaten through the early stages of this year, coming into a bit of contact with Olaz, who she's been around the top of the sport for a number of years. Has Olaz, really, really hard to beat, a superstar for Hungary. She came second at the World Champs in the 25 kilometers in 2015, and has been a superstar fourth at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. So certainly one to watch as we get to the pointy end of this race and the pointy end of the season as we head towards Fukuoka. Yes, certainly one to keep in mind. We've just been given another point score update at the end of lap number 2 for the men's race. As we saw, it was Rozovsky just getting his nose in front of Bethlehem to take second. So it is Rozovsky with 70 points, extending his series lead once again. If he can even just finish the race today, it will be a massive victory for him. Bethlehem out in front. In fact, this could be an interesting shot here as they come around this turn can halfway through lap 3. There's a bit of separation between Bethlehem, I believe that's Guidi, and then Rozovsky sitting in third position without his cap on. But Bethlehem looks fantastic. I'm not sure what to think of this move here. It is Bethlehem, definitely out in front. Rozovsky in third. He has a little bit of a margin to catch up here. I'm not sure it will be too much of a challenge for Rozovsky to shut that down, but it's more about the on-flow effect deeper into the pack. Those swimmers like Axel Raymond, who prefer to sit towards the back of the pack, will really start to feel that effect here. Bethlehem, as we've mentioned a number of times now, really does prefer to sit out the front of the race and dictate the pace throughout. This now the chase back, I believe, of the men's field. Yes, it is. But Bethlehem, he's really putting on the burners here. This is Rozovsky. He's sitting in third. He has those swimmers sitting behind him trying to chase down. We can see Rob Muffles, Marcelo Guidi in the mix there. In fact, that might be Manzi, of Italy, trying to bridge the gap across to Guidi and Bethlehem. But Rozovsky not getting it as easily as he would have liked. You can see it's probably a gap of about 2 meters, so nothing drastic, but enough to remove the benefit of sitting in behind the athlete. This is now the end of lap 3. No sprint points on offer here. Be interesting to see which athletes take a feed. Bethlehem rolls over and sees the difference that he's been able to make in lap 2. Rozovsky with a significantly faster feed in lap 3, and a number of athletes really charging through this feed station. We can see Mateo Kozabek doing a great job to stay in the middle of that pack. So as we saw, Bethlehem, Guidi, Rozovsky 4.2 seconds behind Bethlehem. And I believe that's Guidi now out in front. It is. Guidi leads Bethlehem now coming out of that feed station and has put on the burners early. Manzi on the inside of the course, currently sitting in third. Rozovsky on the shore side, closest to the sports center here, Barkle Sports Center, as these athletes make their way down lap number 4. So things starting to spice up ever so slightly. You got the big names still in there: Wallart, Schutten, Marino, Muffles, Kovacs, Serez, Manzi, Rozovsky, Guidi, Bethlehem, and a number of athletes still in striking distance. We have unfortunately lost Domenico Azzorenza and Dario Varani, both of them really big favourites to at least contend for the medals at the end of the race. Regardless though, Guidi, he's sitting second overall in the point series. He's about 300 points off the lead of Krzysztof Rozovsky, but a big win here will do him a world of joy as he looks to take his first ever overall series win in 2023. But regardless, these men once again choosing to sit a lot straighter into the course and doing a great job of it. Guidi has his own water here. He could create a break. This could be a decisive moment. If anyone doesn't decide to, jump across, I know that Mounsey now leading the charge, but Guidi, this is a big move. I'm not sure he's aware of how big it is. If he has a quick look over his shoulder, this could potentially open up to a lot more than what it is. They get 300 or 250 meters, sorry, into lap number 4 now. Guidi, he's in a commanding lead. We know Rozovsky will want to be at the front of the race at the end of this lap to pick up those sprint points. He's now sitting next to his teammate in Bethlehem. And we see the lead pack swim past the finish line, which they will go through in just over 3.5 kilometers time. But despite these athletes not being in wetsuits today, this is a cracking pace being swum, and Marcelo Guidi taking his opportunity to lead the race with no one on his feet. We can see now Manzi starting to bridge that gap. And what a fantastic shot once again there of our athletes really doing battle. Not as much contact as we saw in the opening couple of laps. It still is quite physical, but the athletes, respecting each other's space and using the pack to their advantage to swim as quickly as possible. But Marcelo Guidi, yeah, he has been in sensational form in 2023, and this is an extension of that. Regardless of the result at the end of the race, Guidi is out in front and looking really comfortable. We know how strong the Italians are in open water. We're missing Gregorio Paltrineri today. We're also missing Azzarenza, Varani. But we have Manzi and Guidi racing, and these athletes all looking to really feature at the end of the race. You add to that Sanzulo, Furlan, and you have some athletes that truly are the top of our sport. And you can see, even though Guidi mightn't be the best Italian, he's probably up there with the best in the world regardless. And the effect that that's having on the rest of the field at the moment is sensational. Interestingly, though, on lap number 4, the conditions have sort of freshened up a bit. It's still 22 degrees in the air temperature currently in Portugal. 4 o'clock in the afternoon now, 5 o'clock in fact. And they are really starting to do battle here in what is a pristine place in the world to race. And I'm sure, although they mightn't have an affection for what the race conditions are at the moment, post-race be a great opportunity in Setubal Coast to kick back, I'm sure, have a pizza. There's 3 weekends in a row where they've raced at a very high level, and I'm sure these athletes are looking forward to what comes next on their scene. I had the opportunity to get some insight with Leonie Beck and Sharon van Rundal this past week as to what they have coming up in their calendar, and I'm sure we'll cover that off when we get back to the women's race. But for the moment, it is Marcelo Guidi leading the men's race in lap 4 of 5 with some sprint points on offer at the end of this lap. So Guidi looking very strong out in front here, really maximizing his distance per stroke. It's something that open water athletes work on throughout the season, both the men and the women. You need to be very, very strong and very efficient through your stroke. So increasing your distance per stroke is essential, and hence why not only do they swim a lot of kilometers in the pool, they'd also spend a lot of time with pool boy and band. Back to the women's race though, Leonie Beck leads Sharon van Rundal. So clearly in the time spent featuring the men's race, Leonie Beck has taken the opportunity to move to the front. Sharon saw that move coming. We saw Leonie and Anna Olaz battling on the opening straight of lap 3. The men's race not too far away from catching the women's. I'm not sure if they will have enough time to do so, but if they do, that will cause even more chaos in this race. Leonie Beck looks fantastic though out in front. It's a bit earlier than we've expected to see her really driving from the front of the race, but despite that, she showed some clear intent to sit forward in this race, and might be something that we could expect ahead of this year's World Championships. We know, obviously, the stakes at a World Cup isn't quite the same as a World Championship race, where, especially in 2023, the top 3 placings will become incredibly important to the success of the athlete ahead of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games. As we've discussed throughout the World Cup stops, this year in Fukuoka, the top 3 athletes will automatically qualify for the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, which means that they will have a full year of training without the stress of having to qualify, and have a clear run into the Olympic Games. So we can see Sharon Van Rundel. She's another athlete alongside Leonie Beck that will be looking to qualify at this year's Fukuoka World Championships. We know the Italians are well represented in this domain and will be looking to do similar, as well as that Chelsea Gubecka, Moesha Johnson, the French athletes, all looking to really have that impact felt at this year's World Championships. But as we look at the conditions now, there has been a significant change in weather. The chop and the wind that was pushing hard earlier has dropped off drastically, and it's really flattened out, which we saw on the start of the men's race. We've noticed the women have been swimming a lot closer to shore on the start of their laps. Now that the conditions are flattened out, we'll see if that still plays effect. Geneva Taducci on screen there, and one of the stars of the 2023 season so far. A very high cadence in stroke rate, much higher than everyone in the race, but it does wonders for her. She competes at the highest level in this domain. So as you get a shot there, you can see just how well the conditions have sort of calmed down. The wind has dropped off dramatically, and that will play in effect of the athletes as they come down to finish off lap 3 here for the women's, but it will start to speed up the speed of the men's race. Those athletes that might have been trapped at the back of the pack are really going to have to make some moves here to make sure that they don't get dropped with just over 2.5 kilometers left in their race. But with Beck out in front, Sharon Van Ruendal sitting comfortably in second, not wanting to do a lot of that work, it's certainly going to play a factor on the overall result. So from this race, as we've mentioned previously throughout the broadcast, most of these athletes, at least the ones that are looking to go and compete at this year's World Championships, will head to altitude. They'll get a nice big block of nice big block of training done in preparation for Fukuoka, set to be held on the 15th of July this year, and they'll really just go up to altitude, do a lot of hard training, especially around that aerobic and anaerobic threshold systems, and a little bit of race day conditions, etc. Try and emulate what could potentially be shown at Fukuoka, and I know that a lot of the women would be planning to simulate what Leonie Beck has shown through the early stages of this season, which has been 8K of solid swimming, 8K of about that 113 to 115 per 100 meter pace, and then the last 2K swimming at about a 108, 109 pace. And if they can do that, they do those longer sessions through the start of the week, and as the week builds on, start to move to the faster, shorter sessions where you're really trying to get those pace 100s, doing those sets of 20 to 30 to 40 100s on 130, aiming to hold sub 105 pace. And that's similar to what Leonie Beck has been able to establish, sitting back in that nice, comfortable anaerobic zone, not using a lot of energy, and then when the opportunity arises, really striking with all the might in the world. So we see our lead pack there. It's quite a deep pack in the women's race. Go around the turn can and come in to finish lap number 3. No sprint points on offer at the end. Leonie Beck still leads Sharon van Ruendaal, and that should be the order as they come down to the intermediate gate, with the pace stretching out but not yet disintegrating this lead pack. So it's good to have the support of the Portuguese government once again. The Portuguese Swimming Federation, big supporters of open water swimming and the World Open Water Swimming Series. They've been a mainstay on the calendar since 2006. They've held the 2012, 2016 and 2020 Olympic qualifications here in Setubal. Obviously, the athletes racing today without the wetsuits, 18.3 degrees the temperature in the water. It is a change to the legislation that was introduced this season that athletes will now not have the option to race in a wetsuit between the temperature of 18 and 20 degrees. 17.99 and under in a wetsuit, and anything above in a race suit. And it would have been interesting to see Anna Marcella racing today. She's quite fond of Setubal. She won this race back in 2019, and she is also a very good swimmer in a race suit. Not so suited to the wetsuit, but still a great competitor nonetheless. It is Leonie Beck leading through, though, at the end of lap 3. Sharon van Ruendaal sitting second, sitting in great position. She gets the feedback from her coach there, and sitting nice and comfortably behind Beck. Taducci in third. We saw her high cadence really punching through the water, much more suited to an open water stroke than an pool swimmer. Caroline Jussy of France sitting in fourth, once again backing up the fantastic form that she's had in this domain since really making the switch over from ultramarathon swimming. Brady sitting in fifth, and Gabrielski, our early leader, currently sitting in sixth position. So those are the top 6 athletes as they make their way now into lap number 4. 5,910 meters swum so far in this race, just over 4,000 meters to swim to the finish line. And this is where things will start to spice up a bit. The flatter conditions really do feature and favor, Leonie Beck out in front. In a flat water race with 4 kilometers to swim, I can't imagine too many swimmers being able to swim over the top of Beck. But regardless, I think that Sharon has set her race up much smarter than races previously this year, where she has chased those sprint points very intensely, and it has ended up costing her at the end of the race. So far, Sharon sitting in nice. She's still leading our point series for the overall season, but Beck at the moment by far the best of the athletes, and that has been the case for the 2023 season. Gabrielski, Taducci, Jussier, and a number of athletes have tried to mix it with Beck, but none have been successful in doing so. In fact, going into what will be this year's World Championships, I can't imagine too many athletes will be able to get over the top of Leonie Beck. The only athlete, or 2 athletes that I think could really challenge Beck is Sharon van Ruendaal who's currently sitting in second position, and Chelsea Gubecka, who hasn't raced the opening 3 stages of the World Open Water series. That's just due to the distance ahead of the Australians to come and compete in the European legs of this series, especially at this time of the year when preparing for the World Championships. So once again, despite the conditions starting to calm down a little bit, the women much different to the men, closer to the shoreline, which is great for our spectators here in Portugal. One of the very few courses in the world where you can see the majority of the action from the shoreline, and these athletes not only cheering on the best in the world, but the best in Portugal as they battle through this fantastic course. So once again, a great shot here of the women's race. We'll get an update of the men's race shortly. They'll be coming down to finish off lap number 4 very shortly. Sprint points on the line. Once again, Krzysztof Rosowski has won every checkpoint thus far. It's a big effort coming here from Leonie Beck on this lap. She is starting to put in the big ones. You can see her legs starting to come into it. Beck doesn't usually bring her legs into the race, and clearly is going out with intent here on this second lap. Taducci on the inside of the course, sitting in second next to Van Ruendal, and I believe that's Gabrielski on the outside of Van Ruendal. So Sharon swimming in somewhat of an Italian sandwich in this opening straight of lap number 4. Speaking of the men's race, though, as we watched Leonie Beck do her thing at the front of the women's race, we saw Krzysztof lead through lap 1 and 2 with serious intent to take out the sprint title once again today. We know he's leading not only the sprint series but the overall series for the men, but has shown that this is what he wants to do. We saw him deliver a similar tactic in Golfo-Oranci in the end of lap 5, which was the final sprint lap. He made the move forward, and that was the decisive move that got him the overall win for the day. We saw Greg Pacinieri do the majority of the work throughout the day, but the move that Rosowski was able to put in on lap 5 was enough for him to hold on to the win in lap 6. But we go to the front of the race here. Leonie Beck, she just looked absolutely fantastic at the front. You can see when she does get some clear water like this, you know, she is almost unbeatable, especially when the conditions flatten off like this. The sun comes out. There's probably no one better to ever have done it in the women's space in conditions like this. Ana Marcela Cunha, unquestionably the GOAT in this domain, but with flat water, Leonie Beck is almost unbeatable, and you can see, even though she has some of the best athletes in the world sitting behind her, they aren't able to bridge that gap that Beck does sort of establish. So we get that fantastic shot here of the overall course. You can see the lead men's pack now on camera. Oh, that's Marcelo Guidi still leading the way here in lap number 4. So Guidi went to the front at the start of this lap and has stayed there ever since. See someone just off his feet. That is his countryman. That is Manzi of Italy, sitting in second. So I don't think we're going to see Rosowski feature here on the points for the sprint title at the end of lap 4. In fact, we won't. It will be in Italian 1 and 2 here as they come down under the timing gate. 1 lap to... In fact, there might even be a gap. Yes, there is a gap. You can see Guidi noticing that gap and not wanting to give an opportunity for the athletes to catch up on the feed there. Manzi sitting in second, 1.4 seconds behind, and then Rosowski with a lot of work to do. 5 seconds the difference Bethlehem sitting just behind Brzozowski. So this is a massive move here from Guidi. He is absolutely putting in the big ones. Manzi, though, in striking distance. The medals will come from Italy and Hungary. There's no doubt about that. Kovacs, Ceres, and Wallart sitting in 5th and 6th. They're way too far back. And Sanzulo, sorry, also out of consideration for the medals. It will be Guidi, Manzi, Rozovsky, and Bethlehem battling towards the finish line. It'd be interesting to see if Rozovsky is able to chase down that gap to Manzi. Manzi has shown no intent to sort of do any work at the front with Guidi. Very happy to sit back and let his countrymen do a lot of the hard yards here. Rozovsky will be counting on that to make that gap up. He just needs to find the feet of Manzi. If he can do that, then he's well and truly in the overall race for the win. So this is a decisive point of the race. They should catch the lead females here, but Guidi just looks absolutely sensational out in front of this race. He is sitting second in the overall series. If he can hold off Rozovsky and get him to finish third, he will take 200 points off the Hungarian, and really only he'll be 100 points behind the lead at that point. So this has a big ramification on the overall series. But Guidi just looks absolutely incredible here in these flat conditions. Just doing absolutely everything to control the race. Back in the pack, Muffles and Minamata of Japan holding on to the very back of that chase pack in about 14th position. So that fourth lap there by Marcelo Guidi, he did put the hammer down, and no one was able to really go with him outside of Manzi. And Rozovsky, yeah, he is in a world of trouble here. I think Italy so desperately wanted the win in last week's Golfloranci. They weren't able to get a win thanks to Rozovsky and Leonie Beck. But they potentially would be cheering on their Italian representative today, Marcelo Guidi. When you think of Italian open water swimming, in the men's case at least, you think Gregorio Palcineri, Accarenza, Varani, and then you go to Marcelo Guidi, fourth probably biggest Italian open water swimmer in the men's, and look at the masterclass that he is delivering once again. Just a superstar of the sport, as is the Italian open water scene. It's interesting, obviously, since its inception in, I believe, 2011, the mixed relay, or what was at the start a team relay, team pursuit almost, 5 kilometer. Italy has always been very strong, but the move towards a single gender relay hasn't really been broached. And if it was to be broached, I can't imagine that there would be a more dominant team in the world than what the Italians could provide, even across sporting codes. You think of the likes of the Jamaican 4x100 meter running team with the likes of Usain Bolt and Powell and some of the sprinting superstars, and you look at the Australian women's 4x100 meter freestyle relay with the likes of Kate and Bronte Campbell and Emma McKeon and all the other superstars that have gone through there. You look at the likes of the USA Dream Team in 1992 with Michael Jordan, Charles Barkley, and a number of superstars of the basketball world. But if the Italian men were able to put together a team of Gregorio Palcineri, Accarenza, Varani, Guidi, Manzi, Furlan, Sanzulo, you could almost do an 8 by 1500-meter freestyle relay, and Italy would almost lap the rest of the field. They are that dominant in this space, and it's so good to see them on display once again through Guidi out in front and Manzi sitting in second. Manzi, he was third in Setubal 2017. He was third behind Christoph at the 2016 Junior Worlds, and he was 15th last weekend in Golf Laranchi behind Guidi, who had a fantastic showing at that race. So clearly Manzi came out with the plan today to sit forward in the race and not have the opportunity to be dropped, and it has paid in dividends here as he looks very much comfortable behind Guidi. I wouldn't discount him here for the win. He obviously has a fair tall task ahead of him if he wants to get ahead of Marcelo Guidi, but due to the work that Guidi's had to deliver here in the fourth and now once again in the fifth lap, Manzi certainly within striking distance for the win. Rozovsky, he's falling further back off the lead. In fact, he might even get swallowed up by that chase pack. I believe that's Hector Pardo on the inside of the course that might be sitting. Oh no, sorry, that's fifth position there. Bethlehem sitting in fourth behind Rozovsky. So Rozovsky on camera now, he's in third position. Bethlehem sitting in fourth. He's just losing contact with Rozovsky's feet here, and certainly in a world of hurt. It's the trouble of leading the majority of the race is when we get to this point in our competition, it does start to get very challenging, especially at such a young age. We've seen it happen on a national level where you can sort of get away with it due to the depth of the field not being quite as good, but when you start racing the best in the world, you do have to adjust your tactics accordingly. Marcelo Guidi, for example, he's played this one to perfection. He came around that third lap, saw Krzysztof Rozovsky take a significant time to adjust his cap and make some decisions in that feed, and he saw that opportunity as a time to really shoot forward and stamp his authority on the race. And what that has caused is a massive split in the field and potentially a win or an unimpeded race to the finish line for Marcelo Guidi. Back to the women's race now, and it's still Leonie Beck leading the way ahead of Sharon van Ruendal. The conditions have significantly changed from the start of today's competition, and it is on show here through Leonie Beck. This would be some resume if Leonie Beck is able to go 3-4-3. She won Summer Bay, she won Golf Laranchi, and she's in position to win here in Setubal in Portugal, and absolutely astonishing pace here in lap number 4. Just looking fantastic out in front. Not quite as comfortable as she looked in Golf Laranchi when she shot to the front in lap number 5 of 6. But regardless, she's still in control, and it's at, I believe, 182 centimeters, Leonie Beck. It's not easy to swim around, especially when she's able to control from the front. But there's plenty of athletes still in touch with Leonie Beck out in front here today, most notably Sharon van Ruendal, who's sitting comfortably in third position, I believe. Yes, third position. That is Taducci on the inside, sitting in second. Gabrielski just behind it's Brady in fourth position, sitting next to Caroline Jussier of France. But Leonie Beck getting a nice little toe there from our lead group. Oh, that's an interesting move starting to form from Sharon van Ruendal, really splitting those two lead lines. Leonie Beck on the inside of the course there. Sharon once again shooting across. We've seen Leonie have some difficulty with her sighting throughout the race, as has Gabrielski. And you can see once again that split really playing an impact on the entire field here. There's a bit of chaos. I tell you, these athletes would not be having fun right now, swimming in zigzags. It certainly adds to the element of competition, and why a lot of these athletes prefer to race in this domain as opposed to the open water swimming. But yeah, it's not great fun when you're not swimming in a straight line. You do get quite frustrated knowing that you're swimming extra meters when not necessary, especially when you're in a spot of bother, as these ladies would be at the sort of end of lap 4 here. We can see at the front there, it is Sharon van Ruendal now. Leonie Beck has had to come across to that pack and with believe next to Gabrielski for second position. So Sharon van Ruendal with quite a classy sort of expertise veteran move, the 2016 Olympic champion. Just not working harder to get around Beck, but working smarter. And the effect that it's had in Beck is shot her all the way back now into contention for third and fourth. She's really starting to struggle here in that contact. We saw her on the opening part of lap 3, I believe, get into a bit of a battle with Anna Olaz, and yeah, she just doesn't look quite as comfortable as she did in Golf Oranchi. It's obviously been a big couple of weeks, as we mentioned, but it has been a big couple of weeks for the majority of the athletes in the field, looking to round out the opening sort of stops of this year's World Aquatics Open Water World Swimming Series. But Sharon van Ruendal now out in front and looking quite strong. I think, yeah, you can't discount the fact that Sharon van Ruendal is an athlete of high class. So we get that shot there of the big tanker coming through the Setubal Bay. As we mentioned, Setubal, formerly a fishing capital of Portugal, specialised in the export and process of sardines, and one of the main ports around the world for that. Tourism now, though, its main attraction, and if you have been to Setubal, you would understand why, especially if you've tried the Portuguese tarts in Setubal. It's unmatched in anywhere in the world. And of course, this bay has been in action on this World Calendar Series since 2006, and you can see, especially with the sun out and the wind sort of dying down, you can see why it is just an exceptional race course for the athletes, for the broadcast, and for the spectators involved. And of course, with the conditions that can be thrown at us through the Sardo River, and the tide changes that come alongside that, it is truly a fantastic place to watch open water swimming. So we're just watching our lead females coming down to finish off lap number 4. Our men also racing at the same time, and they will be looking to finish off that race very shortly. Last update we had, it was Guidi leading Manzi for the win of that race. Guidi finished 4th last weekend in Golf Oranchi, and here we go, the end of the men's race ahead of us. Guidi in the white cap, Manzi in the black cap. Manzi now in a commanding position. Those two have separated themselves from the field. Krzysztof Rozowski, the only swimmer that was in contention to chase them down, and it looks like they have got rid of the threat of Krzysztof Rozowski. Rozowski has been swallowed by the chase pack with David Bethlehem. So they will be fighting for that bronze medal at this point of the race, and it will be between Guidi and Manzi, and it should be a very exciting finish to this race. Although Manzi This course, with all of its trials and tribulations, the toughest part for some of the athletes can come in the final stages of this race. They'll come down, they'll turn left to finish off the lap as they have done with every previous lap, swim under the timing gate once more, and then they'll turn once again as if they were going to attack a sixth lap, but this time it's only a 150 meter sprint to the finish line. So it will be very interesting, and it does come down to race tactics once again. Who can have that inside line into that turn can usually ends up the champion, as they have the shortest line into the the sprint finish. But Guidi, with a bit of work to do to get up to Mount. So you can hear the support down here on the Albacul Sports Park. These fans have been watching the best in open water swimming since 2006, and they're about to see another rendition as they come down not too far from the finish line. Sharon van Ruendaal still leading our women's race as they go through the feeding line. They won't get caught by the men. I think Leonie Beck is in a spot of bother here. She is well back in the pack. Brady sitting in second. Taducci sitting in third. Yes, 3.1 seconds behind Van Ruendaal, who is looking very strong. She's upped her stroke rate. The kick is well and truly in. Who else is in contention at the front? We'll get an update as they make their way through. Caroline Giuseppe Pozzebon of Italy also in there as well. So Leonie Beck just off the pace here. Clearly that toll of readjusting a line and coming into a bit of contact has played an effect on the German. So Netherlands, Italy, France, and Hungary represented in the top 7. Leah Christ now in 8th. Fabian, the junior world champion from 2022, in 9th, and Leonie Beck way back in 10th position. It is going to take a monumental effort from Leonie Beck to get herself into consideration for the win, and saying that even into consideration for the medals. There are some fantastic swimmers who will be up for the battle with Beck as they come into the final lap. Beck does have a good line there on the inside of the course, but that top 4 is going to be hard to chase down from this point. But they're looking at that list of athletes. What a field in play. Angelica Andre, lead Portuguese swimmer, is currently sitting in 14th. She is a force to be reckoned with, and knows this course very well, as to be expected with the Portuguese athletes. But our lead men not far away from the finish, and we'll cut back to them shortly. So the women now on their final lap, taking down this course, and the conditions could not have been more different at the start of this race. Truly is the best of open water swimming here. You can see them relinquishing the fact that there's nothing of note to contend with in terms of a big swell rolling through or anything similar. Sharon van Ruendaal out in front and looking very strong, similar to how Leonie Beck looked last week. She's been pretty clinical through the early stages here. As opposed to the approach in Golf Floranci, she has decided to sit back through the early laps and let the competition sort of rise to the occasion that comes through those sprint gates. And now when the big dogs come out to play, Sharon van Ruendaal leading the way here and looking very good in doing so. Leonie Beck not really in the mix at the front of the race. We've got Brady, Taducci, Caroline Jussier, and plenty of other athletes to contend with the win. But it's going to take a big effort to get over Sharon Van Rundel. Marcelo Guidi, though, and Amanzi leading the way in the men's race. We'll see who gets on top there for Italy. They wanted the win last week, and it didn't fall their way. But they're getting a win here in Portugal, that is for sure. Who gets the win, though, is still to be decided. Andrea Manzi was the leader at our last checkpoint, and they are probably about 2 minutes away from finishing. Manzi in the black cap on the screen now. 1 hour and 50 minutes of swimming, so not quite as quick in this year's competition as has been come to be expected in Setubal. But here we go. These athletes will go under the intermediate gate for the final time. They will turn the final turn can, and they'll have about a 200-meter sprint to the finish. Andrea Manzi was 14th, 15th last week in Golfo Aranci. He has well and truly re-established himself as an Italian to watch. Marcelo Guidi also within striking distance, but it is going to take a huge sprint to get over Andrea Manzi from this point. He had the same line around the Kern. Andrea Manzi had what has arguably been a clinical race. He sat back and he was in the right positions at the right time. He used the experience of Guidi to make that break. Didn't do any of the work. He just sat in, tucked behind, and used Guidi to pull away from Rozovsky and Bethlehem. The Italian came to lap 5, went around his countryman in Guidi, and has not looked like slowing down since he's moved. Marcelo Guidi is in a spot of bother. I can't see Andrea Manzi getting past from this point. He looks absolutely sensational. The big Italian, the strong Italian, driving the arms forward, really pushing with every stroke. The legs now being brought into it. The black cap are well and truly on display. Italy has been dominant throughout 2023 and years prior, and Andrea Manzi is continuing that fine form here in Setubal. He came third in 2017. He was third behind Krzysztof Rozovsky in 2016 at the Junior World Championships. But today, it will belong to Andrea Manzi as he comes down to lap 1 of the women's swimmers, I believe. Yes, it is. That was a bit of a heart attack. Andrea Manzi driving forward and has some separation, in fact, to Marcelo Guidi, who will settle for second. Marcelo Guidi was spectacular throughout the race. The reason these two athletes are pulling away from the field. But Andrea Manzi will be the winner today in Setubal. He has burst away in the final 200-meter sprint, putting on a show for these Portuguese athletes, and every stroke is getting faster and faster. This is a masterclass from Andrea Manzi, who took his opportunity when it arose, and Italy will go 1 and 2 in Setubal with a dominant display from Andrea Manzi, kicking away to the finish line and taking the gold here in Setubal. Third in 2017, gold in 2023. Guidi gets in second. The two Italians embrace, and it has been a spectacular showing in Italy for the men. We lost Accarenza and Varani, and the two Italians in Guidi and Manzi stood up. Bethlehem going to come down to finish in third now, ahead of Rozovsky. He was brave. He led the majority of the race, and he is rewarded here with a bronze medal. Keep your eye on David Bethlehem for years to come. Rozovsky finishes in third. And I think it gets very tight at the top of the competition now between Guidi and Rozovsky for the series lead. Certainly something to watch. The athletes spent, though, an hour and 52 minutes the time to finish the race. And what a race it was. Well done once again to Andrea Manzi, Marcelo Guidi in second, Bethlehem in third. Certainly continuing to prove himself as one to watch. Rozovsky gets in fourth, Sanzullo for Italy in fifth, Hector Pardo up in sixth, and good to see him competing at a high level once again. Wallart of France, our early leader in lap 2, finishes in 7th position in what was a fantastic result. Kozubek holding off Faranango from Ecuador in 8th position. That's a great result for Kozubek in the top 10. And this will be Muffles coming down now to finish, I believe, in 10th position. The German. He's had a tough couple of weeks. Oli Clement has really stolen the show alongside Florian Welbrock, but Muffles a champion of our sport and continues to deliver world-class performances. So there is Muffles across the line now. But Manzi, that was sensational. Really smart racing. It's good to see the tactics and the ingenuity of open water swimming coming back to the dominant display. We did have a brief period where it just turned into whoever was the fastest over 1,500 meters would win the race, and now with the likes of Andrea Manzi, Akarenza, and Rozovsky, it is heading towards some really exciting racing, and I'm sure it's going to be great viewing for those athletes and spectators and fans across the world in this domain. As we've seen throughout the race, a number of times we've chopped and changed between the men's and the women's race. Last update we had was Sharon van Ruendal leading the way. Coming in now to finish for the men, though, is Axel Raymond, the 25k superstar. The pace too hot for him today. He wasn't able to sit near the front and unfortunately wouldn't be too pleased with the result on the finish, but he's still a champion of our sport, Axel Raymond, and I'm sure we'll have plenty of him in the future of open water swimming. Much like Dario Verani of Italy, who had to withdraw, as did Akarenza. So more athletes battling through the field. I believe this is Marcel Schouten now coming down to finish off his race. And we'll go back shortly to the lead of the women's race. So a tough day out there for the athletes. An hour and 52 minutes, the time for the win. In years past, the wins come sub 1 hour 40 on this course. Obviously, no wetsuits in play today. That would have a massive impact on the athletes, and I'm sure competing 18.3 degrees, the water temp, they definitely would be battling. More athletes coming down to finish off the race and get some much-needed experience at an international level. As we've discussed throughout, there was a huge representation of a mix of both experience and youth coming through the sport. Tiago Campos, the lead Portuguese swimmer, finished 18th in Golfo Orange last week, and he'll be looking to have a great swim out today. I think we'll get those results shortly. So we lost a few swimmers from today's race. Number 3, 13, 50, and 47. 52 and 18 as well, unfortunately. So the exiting shots there of the men's race, and we'll go back to the women's race shortly. Last update, Sharon Van Ruendal leading the way, and there she is once again, still out in front. That is Gabriella Toducci in second. And a number of competitors battling for the third position behind Toducci. But Sharon still out in front, and we know if she gets into a sprint finish, or even if she's, out in front like this into that final straight, no one will be getting past her. So there is Sharon Van Ruendal, the 2016 Olympic champ in the marathon. A sensational swimmer. She was at the 2012 Olympics in London. She was competing in the 100 and the 200 meter backstroke for that sake, and really, since making the transition across to open water, she had a good swimming, pool swimming career, obviously as an Olympian, and swimming in Rio in the 400 meter freestyle. I believe she finished 17th that year, but was definitely one to be in the mix. I think she won medals in 2015 in the 400 freestyle at the World Championships. So she is a fantastic pool swimmer, and has made the transition to open water almost better than anyone. She is a genuine superstar of our sport, and a leader within the matter, always pushing for equal representation at this level, and you can see why with such a great ambassador and a lovely person sort of driving the way. Open water swimming can jump behind that and really grab some brand recognition in the matter. But regardless, at the end of the day, Sharon Van Ruendal is a ruthless competitor and almost unmatched with her willingness to push beyond to get the win. Unfortunately for Sharon, she's probably competing in the tightest level of competition on a world stage in women's open water swimming history. The women's space in this area is it's sensational. It's much deeper than the men's at the moment. When you look at the world's field, you could run almost 8 to 10 deep for who could win gold. It's truly sensational. If a race plays out a certain way, it features a different athlete. And then even when you start breaking it down by country, there's a number of Italian and French women that could push into consideration for the gold medal. Same with Australia, that you've got Moesha Johnson, Maddie Goff, and Chelsea Gubecka, who'd all consider themselves medal chances at a world level. You've got Sharon, you've got Ana Marcela, you got Vivian from Brazil as well. It's just a loaded time for women's open water swimming. And even more so, the tactics that are starting to creep into this domain for the women is where open water swimming gets really exciting. Whilst it's great to see a really fast race like we've seen in the men's race in the last couple editions, what is great to see is lead changes and competitive and tight racing and really bunched up packs and tactical sort of breaks, which we've been lucky enough to see in the women's. Even today, we've had about 8 different leaders throughout the race, and Sharon Van Ruendal, she's learnt her lesson through the first 2 stages in Soma Bay and in Gulf Oranchi to wait for her opportunity to swim to the front of the race and strike when the opportunity arises. We had Leonie Beck leading at this point in lap 4, and Sharon sensed that Leonie was swimming off course and that there was an opportunity to cut across. She cut across and pulled up alongside Leonie. Not only did that sort of hurt Leonie's ability to really make an impact on the front of the race, but it meant that all the hard work she'd done throughout lap 4 to then have to slot into about 8th position really had an effect mentally. So that is the level of in detail that these athletes would be thinking of as they sort of deliver this performance. Again and again on this stage. They'd be learning, they'd be reviewing, they'd be looking at the coverage that the World Aquatics has been able to provide through the first 3 stages and picking apart each other's races. And that's where it gets really exciting when you start to add in the athletes that haven't been able to compete, such as the Australians, as mentioned prior. They would have watched all 3 of these World Cup stops to make sure that there isn't a competitive advantage that's been left on the table. Looking at that pack there, obviously we have 7 athletes in the mix at the back. That is Leonie Beck doing her absolute best to try and get around those swimmers at the very back. I believe that's Pozzebon in the black cap in the middle there for Italy. So yeah, Leonie Beck still within striking distance. I can't see her getting over the top of Sharon for the win, but certainly to mix it in the minors. We know Caroline Jussier in the blue cap there, currently sitting for 3rd in a battle with, I believe, that is Ariana Bridi. So obviously this isn't absolutely factual, but leading the race is Sharon Van Ruendal. Sitting 2nd is Ginevra Teducci. In 3rd is a battle between Caroline Jussier and Ariana Bridi, and then we go back and we have Teducci, Gabrielski, Pozzebon, and Leonie Beck, who is absolutely flying through the inside of this course. Those swimmers wouldn't necessarily be aware that Beck is really pushing through at this time of the race. They'd be interlocked with their own battles, knowing that Beck is behind them. But now coming through the field at a rate of knots. Around this turn count here, though, it's about 400 meters to swim, and Sharon Van Ruendal has a commanding lead on this race. Leonie Beck now, though, into battle for 3rd position. Oh, this is going to be a cracking finish for the miners. This is going to be very exciting indeed. If Leonie Beck's able to walk away with a medal here, this is going to be a big result. Leonie Beck undefeated, as we've mentioned, on the first 2 stages of this year's series, and hence the overall series leader at this point of the calendar year. But you know, this is a big move for Sharon. Sharon is sitting 2nd currently. She needs as much room as she can get through the rest of the field to potentially push forward in that series lead. And we can see in the middle there, I believe that's Ariana Bridi starting to go to battle now with Leonie Beck. Leonie Beck, the 200-meter straight dash is the fastest in the field. There's no doubt about that. She's not too fond of the sort of physicality that is provided by this pack, but she's managed to sneak her way comfortably into 3rd now. Caroline Jussier of France, she's not suited to the sprint finish, you know, making the transition to the open water domain, the marathon swimming domain. She's more suited to the ultra marathon area, where she's able to really outwit and outwork those athletes to get the win. She's going to struggle to get over Leonie Beck here, but regardless, it is going to be a great finish. Sharon Van Ruendal leads the way. Teducci sitting in 2nd. Beck now in 3rd. Bridi in 4th with Jussier of France. There's still swimmers sitting off the back. We have Gabrielski and Pozzebon in the mix as well. So around the final can now. 200 meters to swim. Sharon wants the win. Leonie hasn't lost yet. Leonie going well inside the middle of the course. Sharon with the better line. Oh, this is going to be interesting. Leonie Beck is pulled up into 2nd now. This is going to be a cracking finish to the race. So Leonie Beck battling with Ginevra Taducci for second place. Taducci on the feet in line with Sharon Van Ruendal. I can't imagine Sharon's going to be able to get caught from here, but Leonie Beck has clear water, and you do not want to give Leonie Beck clear water with 200 meters to swim. Sharon should swim across and cut off the line of Beck, but she would not be able to really have the oversight of where Beck is sitting. She thought she was gone a lap ago. But Sharon's still holding on here. She looks strong, but Beck with her own water, this is a cracking, absolute drag race to the finish line. So Sharon's still leading in the Netherlands cap, and we have Taducci sitting in second on the feet now of Sharon Van Ruendal, but Leonie Beck in the middle of the course and has probably the best line into the finish line. So Beck with clear water, not towing anyone in, and really seeming to hit her jets here in the final stages of the race. Could she win 3 races in a row? Sharon Van Ruendal needs the win here to keep her hopes alive for a series victory in 2023. Sharon now, in fact, battling with Leonie Beck. Sorry, that is Taducci battling with Sharon for the win. Sharon has done all the work throughout the last couple laps to get into this position, to be sprinting away for the win. And Taducci has pulled up next to her. And here comes, I believe, that is Gabrielski. No, that's Bridie. So this is a 3 to 4 woman wide absolute frantic sprint to the finish. Italy well represented. Caroline Jussy of France now on the inside. It is absolute chaos here as they come down with 100 meters to swim to the finish line. It is anyone's race. 5 across. Italy well represented. Taducci in the mix. Caroline Jussy, could this be her first ever World Cup win? Leonie Beck storming home for the victory as well, but Caroline with a fantastic line. Sharon Van Ruendal fading now. Taducci with a mix, but here comes Caroline Joyce of France absolutely storming home for the win. Can France get the victory? Caroline hasn't won a World Cup 10K, and here it is, her first ever victory. Caroline Joyce of France gets the win in an emphatic finish, in an emphatic fashion. France are on top, and for the first time, Caroline gets the top of the podium in Setubal. What a finish that was. What a way to cap out the Setubal Open Water World Cup 10 kilometer. Caroline Joyce of France gets the victory. 2 hours, 1 minute and 12 seconds with 400 meters to go. I had almost counted out Caroline. She looked cooked in the water, but she stormed home to get the win there. And what a finish it was. Certainly a dramatic way to go out. 5 athletes could have won that race. We talked earlier about how these athletes are just absolutely sensational. Open water swimming in the women's ranks has never been as deep as it currently is. And France storm away to get the win through Caroline. That is a sensational result for Caroline and for France. That was definitely something to read about tomorrow. What a result there for Caroline, just absolutely storming home to get the win. Results across the board, we'll see them shortly, but that was something special for sure, and I hope you enjoyed the last part of the women's race there. So as we discussed, the tactics certainly coming into play. So I think this is Leonie Beck. I think I've messed that one up. Apologies for all the viewers at home. This is Leonie Beck coming in to finish off her race now. So clearly was correct in that early toll, just taking too much of an effect on Beck, and she was spat out the back of that lead pack. and Germany will see Leonie Beck finish across the line. So I think depending on where Sharon Van Ruendal finished in that front pack, anywhere between second and fifth, we might be having a lead change for our overall series leader if Sharon finished in second position. She will be our series leader, but we'll get those results shortly. We'll recap the races as well when we get some more results. But for now, we can just sit back and admire everything that was delivered in that race. As we see more and more athletes come across the line. I believe that was Jess Moat finishing for Australia. Good to see the Japanese team well represented as well throughout the first three stops. So the results across the line, I did miscall that, sorry. It was Caroline Joyce getting the win for France ahead of Ariana Bridi, Sharon Van Ruendal, Bettina Fabian, and Taducci finishing in fifth position. And what a sensational result that was. Really tight racing, not much splitting them at all. In fact, currently the results showing a tie between Bridi and Van Ruendal, which is very exciting for the overall points. Bettina Fabian, the 2022 Junior World Champion, she showed experience beyond her age today to really judge the movement of the pack well and be able to be within striking distance when it mattered was truly sensational. Taducci, once again, near the front of the race and definitely cementing herself as one to watch throughout this 2023 season. The high stroke rate and the ability and the want to work even when it doesn't necessarily suit her, or even when no one else is wanting to do that work required, between Taducci and Gabrielski, who just finished in further down the ranks in 11th position. Certainly something to keep an eye on. So currently results showing Caroline Joyce winning the race for France. It was Bridi getting in second with Van Ruendal, Fabian Taducci in fourth and fifth, Pozovon in sixth position, I believe, just a little bit behind Sismak, Rohax, Chris Beck, Gabrielski, Lara Grandjean, Anna Olaz, Angelica Andre. That's our top 14 swimmers over the line, I believe. And sensational swimming by these swimmers to really push into these top spots. It's certainly, as we've said throughout the broadcast, something to be excited about. The next major race that we look forward to is Fukuoka 2023 World Championships. And a lot of the athletes that we're talking about today will be in action in that race, and it's a special time of the year when we get to see our athletes, our very best athletes at their very best, racing with the intent of being the best, and what that provides in terms of a spectator opportunity. It's certainly very exciting. I do apologise to all spectators watching at home. I know the athletes' names on the final finish there weren't quite correct, so I do apologise for that. But please forgive me in that regards, and I hope going forward, especially with Bettina Fabian, as someone to really watch on her way up as the junior world champion, now getting just outside the podium in a World Cup is certainly a name that we won't be forgetting anytime soon, and someone that we certainly will cover accordingly going forward. So yes, that was Setubal, and what a drastic change in the conditions today. That final lap was a serious impact on the tidal changes and the current really flowing through at the end there, and yeah, to see the result and the way it played out on the athletes is sensational. I'm sure the athletes won't quite appreciate the spectatorial show that they just put on, but regardless, I hope everyone at home appreciate the pain that the athletes are willing to put themselves in to put themselves in a position to really challenge for the overall win. So we're just getting word that the second position is currently under review. So that was currently listed as a tie between Brady and Sharon van Ruendaal. So the technical officials will, of course, complete their due diligence in this regard and come back with the result in due course. We're just going to have a quick little break here. We'll have a 4-minute break, and then we'll get things kicked off shortly with our men's medal ceremony and women's medal ceremony for the 10-kilometer race.
Once you have you have to tell her, okay? And I need this.
So we're back and not too far away from our medal ceremony today for the men's and women's 10 kilometer in the 2023 round 3 of the World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup here in Setubal, Portugal. As we've discussed, this race venue has been a stalwart on the calendar since 2006, hosting the 2012, 2016, 2020 Olympic qualifications here in this fantastic course, and in a fantastic race that we did see today with both the men's and the women's race. The men's absolutely clinical performance by those athletes, and from the women's a much more chaotic but very, very thrilling race for the athletes in the water. We'll talk about the men's race and just 30 athletes on the start line today, as opposed to the 85 that took to the water last weekend in Golforanchi. And you could see early on Bethlehem of David Bethlehem of Hungary, really with intent, going out and trying to control the race from the front. He's done that on a number of stages now where he has wanted to really control the race, and it's worked to certainly success, not ultimate success. He's still yet to win a World Cup stop, but he's got probably his best swimming years ahead of him at the moment, just 20 years of age, the young Hungarian there. But nevertheless, he went to the front of the race and tried to control it. Rozovsky coming through at the end of lap 1 and controlling that speed there to take the overall points, the sprint points, which he is demanding the lead in through the early stages of this year's series. Similar sort of play played out in lap number 2. Bethlehem battled with a couple other athletes, but regardless, sort of similar outcome with Bethlehem leading the way. Rozovsky came through once again at the end of lap 2 to push through and once again take the points. At the end of lap 2, there was a bit of miscommunication between the athletes and the different federations represented at the front, but similarly Bethlehem, really controlling the race, deciding, I want to sit at the front, and I don't mind what cost that plays on my speed at the end of the race, and hence, did look the best of the athletes. You sort of were watching and thinking Rozovsky is certainly within striking distance and looks to be the main man. He was the athlete of the highest profile into today's race, and clearly the odds-on favourite to take the win. So Rozovsky was always sort of hovering around and mainly, having to use his strength and power to bridge the gaps that formed at the front of the race due to the conditions. And yeah, that was certainly on show overall. But coming towards lap 4, the conditions started to get a bit nicer. The wind stopped being so howling and really much calmer for coaches, athletes and officials out there on the water today. But Rozovsky had a bit of a mishap with his goggles and cap and did have a situation which pushed him towards the back of the pack, and Marcelo Guidi saw that open up and saw that as an opportunity to really march forward. So Guidi went forward into the start of that 4th lap, and going with him, Andrea Manzi, his countryman, decides to push the pace as well. So Guidi led out Manzi, and Rozovsky was sitting just in behind, but there was a gap that formed at the end of that 3rd lap going into, in the end of the 4th lap going into the 5th, where Guidi was able to open about a 4 to 5 second lead ahead of Rozovsky. So Guidi really did put that pedal down and tried to punch out into the distance, and on that opening straight on the final leg, looked like no one was going to go around him. The very big, strong, long stroke that is Marcelo Guidi, it has seen him have so much success on this level. He was at the front and looking really good. And unfortunately for him, through pushing really hard, Andrea Manzi had to push hard, but more importantly, got to sit in nicely behind the hard work that Guidi was putting in. Andrea Manzi, tucked in, pushed hard, and then when the opportunity came up, he struck. And he went through, and there was absolutely no one getting in his way.
Mexican girl vomiting. I asked her, "Are you cold?" I said, "No, vomiting." And Domenico, I knew that he was going to make her because he just jumped to make sure that he gets.
So, then once Manzi got to the front, he was just absolutely clinical. Went around the final can, had the best line, squeezed out any sort of hope that Marcelo Guidi had at getting across. Just on the screen now, still seeing Aaron Abridi and Sharon Van Ruin tied for second overall. That is currently being reviewed by our technical officials, and we'll have the results coming through as soon as possible.
I'm telling you the feedback on that because I wanted to know this because it happens very often. So I asked him.
Regardless, as I was saying at the finish, Guidi and Manzi fighting, but Manzi just absolutely clinical with his lines, making sure that there's no opportunity to sneak around the cans and get a better turn. So Guidi just pulled away, and coming into that finish line, you could see the toll that it had taken on Guidi doing all the hard work, and Andrea Manzi just stormed away for the victory in what was a great result. Finishing 15th last week in Golf Oranci, he would have been a little bit disappointed with that result, but to come out and deliver what he did today ahead of Marcelo Guidi is just sensational. And Bethlehem, also a fantastic result to finish in third position after all the hard work he did from the front of the race, with some fantastic athletes in the field today, and just not enough for those athletes to push at the front. In the women's race, as mentioned, is much more chaotic. The finish was absolutely as messy as it gets, but definitely very exciting to sort of call that action across the line. So many athletes in the mix, so many different leaders at different points. We had our Italians up there, but leading early on, which is uncharacteristically the case, and it was the birthday girl today, Leonie Beck of Germany, who was doing a great job out in front, and there was a brief point in time where we thought that Leonie Beck would swim from the front at the start of the race and struggle to be caught all day, but that unfortunately wasn't the case for Leonie, and I'm not sure if we will ever see that in a women's open water race. It certainly would be an impressive day to see so. So just recapping the women's race. Just had the update that it is official. It is a tie for second between Ariana Brady and Sharon Van Ruendal. So a fantastic result to those two athletes, and more so Caroline Jussier of France getting the win. Her first ever World Cup win over the 10 kilometers. She's had a rough transition from the 25 kilometers to the 10 kilometer sort of domain, and whilst she's always been thereabouts, she hasn't been on top of the podium. To see her come out today and get such an emphatic win in a star-studded lineup. Like, not only that, but more importantly, having competed at a high level over the last couple of weeks, is it's fantastic to see. She, finished 17th in Israel last year, and clearly has done a lot of work over the off season to come back and deliver a result that she did today. 5th in Golf Oranchi, but to get the win, just spectacular, and has well and truly announced herself as an athlete to watch in this domain at 29 years of age. And just incredible to see and incredible to watch the resilience of the athlete in Caroline, who has always been on the scene, specifically around the ultramarathon scene, to come and have success now at a World Cup. And I'm sure with a sprint finish like she's delivered today, which I didn't think was possible, is certainly something that's very exciting ahead of World Champs this year, and potentially a home Olympics for Caroline in 2024. We know that the French team, given that they get a spot for hosting the Olympics, regardless of where the athletes finish, we know that they will most likely have 2 athletes on the start line next year in both the men's and the women's race. And so Caroline leading the way at the moment for France, but Ariel Muller showed us how good she is last week, and there's a bunch of French athletes that want to push for that spot, including Lara Grandjean-Deville, Oceane Castagnol, and as I mentioned, Ariel Muller. So we look ahead to the rest of the 2023 season. This was, of course, meet 3. At the moment, there's 5 meets planned for the World Aquatics Open Water World Cup Series, with meet 4, set to be held in Paris, in the race venue, and that's something to look forward to. The World Aquatic Championships set to be held in July. Another event that everyone will be watching closely, and will be covering along the way. We've discussed a number of times the storylines that sit behind that, especially in the women's race today. But the men's race, we've seen Florian Wellbrock take a dominant win in Summer Bay. We saw Krzysztof Zalewski take a dominant win in Golf Oranchi. I don't think that we'll see Andrea Manzi racing the 10K in Fukuoka. I think Atzarenza and of course Gregoria Paltrinieri will be our race favourites from Italy. But regardless, it's certainly going to be interesting racing in that domain, and similarly in the women's. For those at home who don't know, the qualification process for the Paris Olympics, the top 3 men in the 10 kilometers and top 3 women in the 10 kilometers, who gain automatic qualification for the next year's Paris Olympics. And then at the 2024 Doha World Championships in February next year, the following 13 athletes who weren't included in that top 3 will be selected to represent, or the NOCs will be selected to race at the Olympic Games. So that's certainly something to look forward to, between, of course, our athletes competing at this year's World Championships, but then the on-flow effect who will be competing at next year's World Championship. We know a number of federations around the world will then use the period between the Fukuoka Games and the Doha Games as an opportunity to re-qualify their teams and make sure that they have their fastest athletes competing when it comes to Doha, and ultimately competing in Paris. Specifically in the case of France, where you have the likes of Sasha Belli, coming up, and even Germany with Linus Schwedler are on the cusp. Carlos Garish of Spain thereabouts, and even in Australia where Kyle Lee has started to make his imprint felt on that national team. We know Nick Sloan and Bailey Armstrong have secured that spot for 2023 and will be aiming to be in the mix for the 3 at this year's World Championships to secure their spots. But when you start to look at how many athletes will be looking to medal in the 10 kilometre at this year's World Champs, it certainly starts to become a mouth-watering prospect. I'm sure if you asked any open water fan around the world as to who they thought would be the athletes competing at this year's at this year's World Championships, you'd almost get a different answer from every fan. I know the Hungarians will be hoping that they have some representation in the medals, and as to how it sort of falls together is anyone's guess, but it's certainly an exciting prospect for open water fans around the world. Obviously, last year's World Championships came together quite late in the preparations, but of course a big thank you to Budapest for supporting our athletes to be able to compete, and it was great to see the athletes really stepping up to the mark. Women's, just refreshing everyone's memory, it was in the top 10. Maria Diaz of Spain in 10th. Moesha Johnson finished in 9th in just her second international open water swim. Lynn Boy finished in 8th. Angelica Andre of Portugal in 7th. Anna Olaz in 6th. Katie Grimes at just 16 years of age finished in 5th. Aurora Mueller finished in 4th. Anna Marcela Cunha in 3rd. Leonie Beck was in 2nd, just 0.5 behind Sharon Van Ruendal, who took the gold. So if you even just look at that result from last year, with only 1.5 seconds splitting the top 3, it's very exciting. And I remember watching the 5, the 10, and the 25k at Budapest last year, and nothing was splitting the athletes. So certainly an exciting prospect. In the men's race, a similar sort of result in terms of how tight the competition was for first and second, but to third it was a bit of a gap, and fourth even there as well. The top 10, Logan Van Hoys of Belgium was in the mix. Jan Herzog of Austria was 9th. Nick Sloman finished in 8th position in a real breakout swim for Sloman. Good to see him representing Australia in the top 10. Nicholas Frak of Germany finished in 7th. Romanchuk of Ukraine in 6th. Bethlehem, fantastic swim for him. 18 years of age last year to finish in 5th position. Marc-Antoine Olivier was just outside the medals in 4th. Florian Welbrock finished in 3rd. Axerenza finished in 2nd, and Paucineri was the world champion. So, it like when you know that the majority of those athletes will be looking to compete once again this year, and you can add a couple more into the mix as well. It's very exciting. It's exciting to sort of look ahead to that battle, and then the ramifications of athletes that do and don't get selected from there, and the effect that has on that federations. It starts to highlight not only the top level of open water swimming competition around the world, but we start to bring into the fact that the LEN Open Water Series is something for all fans to sort of support. Unfortunately, they don't have the same sort of coverage that World Aquatics has really invested into this space, but regardless, we watch on enthusiastically. So as you can see on the screen now, we're not too far away from our medal presentation, and we'll have a quick break before we jump back in. So here we go, our medal ceremony not too far away now. We can see all the delegates starting to make their way towards the podium. So big congratulations to all the athletes that really stepped up today. We know the conditions, especially at the start of the race, weren't to be as desired. 18.3 degrees in the water, 21 degrees out of the water, with a howling wind at the start and then dying off in the end. Obviously, these athletes, whilst they did have to battle the temperatures and the conditions throughout the race, now get to enjoy the rest of their afternoon in one of the most beautiful cities in the world, and one of the best tourist destinations as well. If you are an open water fan around the world, I would suggest getting down to Setubal, Portugal, to try and cheer on your swimmers and really bring some life to this fantastic tourist destination, and see, hopefully, the bottlenose dolphins that call the Sado River home. So looking at the results, we saw a number of these athletes featured prominently at the start of the race, but unfortunately Marcel Schouten fading from 7th to finishing in 18th overall for the Netherlands. We know he will be back in contention in the years to come. Axel Raymond finished in 15th position, his first race for the year in this sort of setting. He was 9th after the first lap and then sort of faded back from there. And we know he does sort of favour the longer races, and we'll be circling him as an athlete to watch going forward. Rob Muffles finished in 11th position, Kozebek in 10th, Faranango of Ecuador finished in 8th, which was great. Jules Wallart of France, just 21 years of age, certainly one to watch going forward. He finished in 7th position. He was sitting first at the start of lap 2, and just, was 3rd, 1st, 5th, 7th, in amongst it, 6th, and then finished overall in 7th position. Hector Pardo of GT finishing in 6th position, and it's great to see Hector still competing at a high level. He's quite young as an open water swimmer, just 23 years of age. 22 years of age. 16th after lap 1, 15th after lap 2, 12th, 9th, and then obviously finished in 6th position. So a fantastic result by Hector. Mario Sanzullo of Italy was in 5th, and another terrific competitor in this domain. Just 29 years of age is Dario, 15th after lap 1, 10th, 14th, 7th, and then finished in 5th position, and was really hunting down Krzysztof Rosowski who is obviously a champion of our sport. He finished in fourth, behind his teammate David Bethlehem. Rozovsky was leading after lap 1 and 2, and then sort of faded third, and then finishing in fourth after he ran out a bit of gas to chase down Bethlehem. Bethlehem, as we can see now on the screen, finished in third. And a big congratulations to David Bethlehem on the podium ahead of Krzysztof Rozovsky. Just, 20 years of age, 19 years of age, in fact. He is one to watch in the future. He was sitting second for a majority of the race, first when he could, and finished in third. A fantastic result. In second, one of the bravest athletes you'll ever see, and certainly was on display today. Marcelo Guidi finished in second, and a fantastic result for him. But ultimately, there can only be one winner, and today's winner was a dominant one. Andrea Manzi from Italy, a champion of the sport and a champion of today's tactics, using the conditions to his advantage to get the win, and a very well-deserved win by Andrea Manzi. And just absolutely incredible to watch him deliver what he did. So congratulations to Andrea Manzi. He's only 26 years old, and certainly 25 years old, and certainly has a lot of swimming left ahead of him. So as we see our medalist and champion up there on the podium now, it is a fantastic result for Italy. They so desperately wanted these medals last week in Golfo Aranci. They had to wait, but they certainly delivered once again in Setubal, Portugal. And we see our athletes now standing to attention for the national anthem of Italy. Setubal, let's get another round of applause for our athletes. And there it is, Andrea Manzi ahead of Guidi and Bethlehem in third. Certainly is an exciting prospect for the future of open water swimming, and to hear the Italian anthem on the top of the podium. It's one of the best anthems, I believe, out there, the Italian anthem, and Andrea Manzi, you can see how much it means to him to be on top of the podium. As we look back now to see the finish of his race, and the work was done before the finish line for Manzi. Guidi, he did his best and was clinical in the ultimately getting the win for Manzi, but that was a fantastic finish for Manzi, and equally Bethlehem to be able to push up in third position and doing a fantastic job in that race. I'm sure he'd take a lot of confidence out of getting ahead of his teammate in Krzysztof Rozowski, and use that to spur him on for ultimately what he'd be hoping for, a podium at Fukuoka this year. So here we have our category updates at the end of the men's race. Our sprint leader still remains with Krzysztof Rozowski. He was extending his lead today, finished as the points leader for today's race and once again for the series thus far. He won lap 1, he won lap 2, he was third in lap 4, so just only behind Manzi and Guidi. So Guidi moves now into second position for the overall point scores, but Krzysztof Rozowski retains the fluorescent orange cap, and it's looking good. Once again, though, we'll do our series points leaders, I believe, in a second. Don't think Krzysztof needs to step off the stage, in fact, because he I believe remains at the top of the point score.
So let's give it up another round of applause for Krzysztof Rozowski.
Yes, I believe that is Krzysztof Rozowski, which is fantastic, not only for Krzysztof but for the sport, showing that if you do chase those sprint titles, that's why it definitely helps if you're Krzysztof Rozowski, but if you chase those sprint titles, you can certainly reap the rewards on multiple levels. So whilst Rozowski ultimately in fourth position overall, the result are still within his favour. We're not too far away from our presentation with our women's 10-kilometre title. We had a number of athletes pushing towards those medals, but ultimately only 3 being presented today, which we'll cover in a second. Of course, you can stay up to date with all the action on World Aquatics platforms, be that the website, newly reformed website, looks fantastic, by the way, with the recent rebrand. And then, of course, in addition to that, we'll go back to the medal ceremony. So, in second place, as we can see now, Ariana Britti and Sharon Van Ruendal. Nothing could split them after 10K. Sharon and Ariana really towards the front of the race for the majority. And, Sharon and Ariana are just 2 stalwarts of the sport, battling throughout. But a fantastic result, and I mean this with every emphasis of the word. Caroline Joyce of France getting the win is just a sensational result, and really a testament to her dedication and tenacity in this domain to continue to push and continue to chase the dream of being an Olympic champion. Obviously, with the home Olympics ahead of Caroline, she is looking forward to getting the opportunity to represent her country, and the last couple of weeks have been sensational for Caroline to get her first podium, her first gold medal at a 10-kilometer World Cup meet is just it's a massive step forward for Caroline, and I'm sure she'll be remembering this moment for the rest of her life. So well done to Caroline on top of the podium today in Setubal, and well done to Sharon and Ariane as well. Our 3 medalists in today's race, as we get ready to stand attention for the French national anthem.
A vossa atenção para escutarmos o hino de França. I now call for your attention for the national anthem of France.
Well, once again, well done to Caroline, Sharon, and Ariane Brady. That was a fantastic race and a fantastic way to cap out our individual performances here in Setubal, Portugal. Meet 3 of the 2023 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cups. Of course, still the relays in action set for tomorrow. We've got a couple more presentations, I believe, with our presentation of our sprint title and our overall series lead. I'm not too sure if we've had a change in that yet. It was a fantastic finish across the line, though. I do like the look of the young Hungarian, the 2022 Junior World Champion, Bettina Fabian of Hungary. I think the Hungarians are going to have a fantastic relay tomorrow, as will our Italians. You know, the Italians have been strong at every stop. The Germans won't be racing tomorrow. They haven't been beaten yet. They will obviously not win tomorrow, given that Bettina Fabian leads the junior category now with the win from today. Congratulations, Bettina. What a finish. What a race from Bettina, and certainly one to keep an eye on going forward. The fluorescent green cap, you'll certainly be able to spot her. I believe we've had 3 different winners in this domain through the first 3 stops, but Bettina is certainly the most dominant of those wins thus far. Our current sprint champion up next, and there's no surprise here. Sharon van Rundal still leading the way for the sprint title. A superstar of our sport, and much like Christoph, really trying to get after this space and really leading it. Good to see the fluorescent orange matching the Netherlands uniform, and there you have it as well. Sharon van Rundal leading our series points as well. Leonie Beck undefeated through the first 2 stops, but Sharon with the consistency getting the series lead after the first 3 stops. We still got 2 stops to come in Paris and Israel in December, and plenty of storylines lay ahead of us with the 2023 Fukuoka World Swimming Championships not too far away either. That draws a conclusion on day 1 of the 2023 World Aquatics Open Water Swimming World Cup stop here in the beautiful Setubal, Portugal. My name is Will Rollo. I have absolutely been delighted to join you through this broadcast, and we look forward to showing you all the action tomorrow for the mixed 4x1500 meter freestyle relay.